The Rebbe wants Limudat Torah. Everything else is an offshoot of that. The Rebbe, all the shlichus comes from the fact that we are doing hafatzas hamayonis. It's true that eventually means also helping Yidden begashmias, but that's not where it starts from. It starts from Torah. That's the number one thing. Nigle, chassidus, poshet, and that's what the Rebbe was. Moloris Deir Savaye means Torah. Sof kol sof.
This episode is made possible by Machane Yisrael. Pesach is coming up, and the bills are piling up as well. Learn how you can be part of the Rebbe's Mois Chitim a little bit later in the episode. I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Garelik, and thank you very much for agreeing to do part 2. Many people asked, when is part 2, when is part 3, when is part 4, so we'll move on with part 2.
It is my pleasure and my honor.
Okay, so I believe that where we left off was when you talked about your visit and when the Rebbe gave the Haggadahs. Very interesting, the Haggadahs that the Rebbe gave for everybody. And I imagine there were subsequent visits that you and your mishpacha had, or yourself maybe, or later, from Milan. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Now, let's clarify. The Haggadah I was already here in yeshiva. I came that year. It was the year of my bar mitzvah, so I was already here in yeshiva. After that, there were a few interesting incidents. One of them, very cute, the following year in Tafshil Lamed Hey. The story of the Haggadah was Tafshil Lamed Daled. This is Tafshil Lamed Hey, Kislev. My dear cousin, Rabbi Levi Garelik, got married. He actually became my cousin because he married Mrs. Oltein. She was a Darren, my first cousin. And my mother came for that wedding. The wedding was around Yudalet Kislev time, Tafshin Lamed Hey. When my mother had to go back, so as the minhag used to be those days, whoever's traveling back stays in Gan Eden, in the hallway in 770, stands by the place where the sefarim are, that window. And when the Rebbe comes out from Minche or Maidiv and somebody's standing there, that means that they're leaving. So my mother was standing there with my brother and my sister, if I believe. I was then already 14. Now, I was learning in yeshiva in Rosh Parkway. And mit Tamol, the Rebbe started looking at them like fortgesundheit, but somehow the Rebbe motioned that they should come in to get in that Tachten. So Rabbi Groner was there, even Rabbi Klein, my father-in-law, later became my father-in-law, and he said we should go into Gan Eden Tachten. So I was thinking, I would assume that Rebbe wants to give him something because they're traveling back. I'm here in yeshiva, I don't belong there. On the other hand, they're going to Gan Eden Tachten. Who knows? So I asked Rabbi Klein, I'm not traveling, but is it okay if I go? And he said, sure, chaparein. Anyways, we go into Gan Eden Tachten, and he closes the door behind us. So now we're all standing there. The Rebbe's in his room, door's closed. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, what am I doing here? They're leaving and ich stay there. So I figured, and I can't leave, because if the Rebbe may come out, it's not nice. So I hid behind my mother. I figured, let me just stand there. At least I'll hear what's going on. The Rebbe came out. He gave them each one $1, before traveling. And the Rebbe gave my mother a $50 bill. And the Rebbe said, und das ist ein Status in der Nesia. I never heard, whatever. And then the Rebbe looks around. And the Rebbe, I saw it there because I was, I put up one eye just to see what's happening. And I saw the Rebbe went on his tippy toes. The Rebbe went like this, over my mother's shoulder. And the Rebbe says, was behalst du sich? And the Rebbe called me over and he gave me $1.
Why are you hiding?
Yeah, why are you hiding? Was behalst du sich? No, it was a very, how do you say it? How do I explain it? Kriya shel chiba, it was like a very, very, was behalst du sich, you're part of the crew. What are you? No, that was just a very interesting, that was that. Then in Tafshin Lamed Tes, was the first time that our family was here by the Rebbe. We were all together. either Tav Shlametes or Mem Aleph. I'm trying to remember. You could check that out. Very simple, because that Tishrei, the Rebbe gave out after Yechidus at the end of the month. The Rebbe gave out for all the men a Tanya with the Rebbe's signature in the back, and a Siddur to the ladies with the signature. So I remember we went into Yechidus whole family because it's the first time that our family, the whole family complete, was by the Rebbe stuff in Yotes. So the Rebbe said then we should come all into Yechidus as a family. And the Rebbe said then, und der Rav mit die Zin soll nehmen, Arangini Maskirus und nehmen Tanyas, und die Rebbetzen mit die Techter soll nehmen Siddurim. That was the Lashon. That Rebbe gives a lot of beautiful brachas in that Yechidus. There was one time that I remember going into Yechidus with my father. That was another story. But these were the basic... another interesting thing. In Tafshin Lamed... Oh boy. I could look up exactly in Lekutei Sichos. I think it's Tafshin Lamed Ches. This was Yud Aleph Nissen by the Fabrengen. And I came... I was here by the Fabrengen. One of the person who gets the credit for the fact that we are in Italy, his name was Mr. Zippel. I think maybe we discussed him, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyways, so his son, his family was here in America, not in Italy. His wife was here in Manhattan, and his son.
Whose
his
family?
son, what? His wife and kids.
Mr. Zippel?
Mr. Zippel's. There's 4 brothers.
Oh, okay.
So the oldest one, his family was here on Park Avenue. And today he's a big doctor in Etzisrael. Very, very nice people. Beautiful. Anyway, so he came to that Fabrengen. He was standing next to me. And then I went upstairs after the Fabrengen. We always go upstairs to see how the Rebbe goes into his room after the Fabrengen. And like 5 or 10 minutes later, the Rebbe would come out to go home. You know, it was Lebedik. After that Fabrengen, the Rebbe walked out of his room. And all of a sudden, the Rebbe said that he's going to give out nickels, I think, to all the Orchim. All the Orchim that came. So I figured, he's also a Neirach, right? He's a guest. So all the people the Rebbe was in the hallway. In other words, right walked out, and like right next to the sefarim window. So I took Mr. Zippel's son. It's the only time that I initiated a conversation with the Rebbe in my life. I don't think I ever did that before, any other time. And I told the Rebbe, das is Carlo Zippel's son. So the Rebbe looks at him, and the Rebbe says in English, and he points with his finger this way towards Yechidus, I have a letter for you on my desk. Now, he didn't understand exactly what the Rebbe says, so I right away told him, the Rebbe is saying that he has a letter for you on his desk. Then the Rebbe asked, where is he going to be in the next few weeks, like Pesach? And so he also didn't understand exactly. I told him, where are you going to be? So he said he's going to be in New Jersey. So now the Rebbe pointed this way to Maskiros. And the Rebbe said that he should leave in Maskiros the address, and they will send him the letter to where he's going to be. That was all. But excuse me, first the Rebbe went like this, and the Rebbe went like that. And so when we walked away, I told him, you better send me a copy of that letter. He said, sure, no problem. Anyways, he sent it to me, and I took it and I printed it in Lekutei Sichos later. Very, very geschmacke letter. First of all, he wrote to the Rebbe that he's learning in Yeshivat HaKotel, and he had a question in Chassidus about a Niyavai Leishanisi. You know, on one hand, we say in the Pasuk that Rebbe doesn't change. On the other hand, we have millions and billions of Nivroim. His famous question in Chassidus. And the Rebbe wrote him back a beautiful letter, where the Rebbe says he was very happy to hear the Yeshivat HaKotel. And the Rebbe, in a very short and concise way, like in 4 paragraphs, the Rebbe explains the answer to the question. Very geschmacke letter. But years later, I found a letter from the Rebbe to Mr. Carlo Zippel, in English, where the Rebbe writes to him, you know, one thing, a second thing, then the Rebbe says, yeah, it's true that no news is good news, but it would have been nice to hear from you directly that your son is learning Yeshivat HaKotel, etc. Like a very interessant... so I was very happy that I did that, you know, that I introduced him to the Rebbe, and this way it sort of made more even the connection between the Rebbe and Mr. Zippel. It was that was one. Then basically these were the.
So this is all while you're learning in 770.
Not in 770.
Whatever in New York.
This is Ocean Parkway. This is Ocean Parkway and Morristown. Yeah, I went to Morristown in Tafshel Lamed Ches Lamed Tes, those 2 years. Here I would like to mention something very, very important for the Bachrim Beiker. Those days, there was something called Hoaras Hatmimim, which is Baruch Hashem today, it became all over the place. At that time, there was one place they gave Hoaras Hatmimim, that was 770. And 770 started before Shnas HaShivim, before the Rebbe turned 70, before Yud Aleph Nisan Tav Shel Lamed Beis. For Yud Aleph Nisan Tav Shel Lamed Beis or Lamed Gimel, one of those two, they gave out a book about Hoaras Hatmimim, and the Rebbe gave certain heroes, whatever. After that, they started in Morristown to give out Hoaras Hatmimim. Now, 770 used to give out once in 3 weeks, let's say, sometimes once a month. And Morristown also started like once every couple of weeks. I would say in a full Zman, in a year, they gave out, let's say, 15. So they had... in the summer of Tav Shel Lamed Vav, when I was still in Ocean Parkway, I have a cousin in Morristown, Rabbi Eliakim Wolf. So in the summertime, I used to spend time in what's called Turkey, part of Gan Yisrael, with Ocean Parkway. But 1 year I had to go to Italy for something. So there were like 2-3 weeks between yeshiva and going to Italy. So instead of Drenzach, I went to Morristown. And I figured I'll sit there in the Zal. I'll stay by my cousin, Eliakim, and I'll stay in the Zal. Helft der Rebbe that Punkt Rabbi Silverberg from Detroit had a balabus who made a switch with Reb Shmulik Heber. Reb Shmulik Heber was the Rosh Yeshiva. Reb Shmulik Heber went to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael. So he gave his house to this balabus because this balabus was a doctor and he wanted to learn for 2-3 weeks. So he stayed in Rabbi Heber's house, him, his wife, and maybe even some kids, I'm not sure.
Who did?
This doctor from Detroit. Now they needed a chavrusa. They should learn with him from the morning till at night. So they figured, oh, perfect. I was there, 15 years old, 16 years old. And I learned with him literally from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. Chassidus, Nigle, Gemara, everything. Helft der Rebbe, I used to come at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, sometimes he was there, sometimes not. If he wasn't, there were 2 people in the Zal. Those days in the summertime in Morristown, there were 10, 15 Bachrim. There were 2 people in the Zal at 8 o'clock.
After this month.
Yeah, it's after this, because it's in the summertime. So there were always like 10, 15 Bachrim in Yeshiva. Who was there at 8 o'clock? Rabbi Melech Tzibel and Levi Garelik. So we became good friends. You know, we're sitting 2 people by ourselves. So when this guy wasn't there, I learned with Rabbi Melech, which was Gan Eden Noelian. This guy was an open encyclopedia. Now, I had a chush in writing, typing. My father did that to me. When I was a kid, my father used to make me write and type. My father made me learn diktuk. Imagine, just to, I have a whole story about that, but that will appear maybe for another time. And he was planning to give out a Hoaras Hatmimim that week, but there was nobody to type it, nobody to do it, that he know to do. So I said, I'll do it for you. And I prepared the whole Gillian, typing 11 pages, whatever it called those days, and I gave out the Gillian. When I came to learn in Morristown 2 years later, I decided, with my chavrusa, by the way, Rebbe Alter Bucket, who's the shlich in Lexington. Now, the rule in Morristown was that you learn in Morristown for 2 years. The first year and the second year. The first year, you're not allowed to be involved in Hoaras Hatmimim. It takes time. It's work, and it's typing, and it's going to printing, and the learning part, a bissel, but the practical part, sicher nicht. The second year, you can. So, my chavrusa and myself, we decided, the second year, we are going to give out Hoaras Hatmimim every 2 weeks. Because Baruch Hashem, we started learning the shlichus'n, and we had a whole bunch of hours and things there.
Hoaras Hatmimim is in all topics then, or was it only the Rebbe's?
No, only shlichus'n. Only shlichus'n. All the Torah started the following year, Tafshim Mem, and they started slowly but surely doing in different topics. Morristown was strictly shlichus'n.
And also what the Rebbe spoke by Fabringens?
No, that started later.
So it's only shlichus'n.
Yeah, that started like in the Mems.
So the current liquid, whatever was coming out.
Liquid or shlichus'n, or shlichus'n in general. And also, Reb Melech Tzibel told us a beautiful story that he went into Yechidus once and he told the Rebbe that he heard different opinions about the Hoaras in Morristown. That the Rebbe likes it and the Rebbe doesn't like it. He heard different opinions. So he's asking the Rebbe, if it's no good, he'll stop. And the Rebbe told him, not only it's good, by mir in Zimmer is da given a Rosh Yeshiva. And he asked me a question, Likutesiches, and I took out the Hoaras Hatmimim from Morristown and I showed him, via Bocher in Yeshiva asked this question. This is what Melech Tzibel told us the story. I heard the story. The Rebbe not only approved, it's beseder. the Rebbe gave a meridic push. Nicht nur, es ist gut. A Rosh Hashiva was by me, and he asked me, and I showed him that a Bacher fragt the Shaila. So I figured, that's going to be my project next year. And because we were learning Rebbe Likutei Sichos for a few years, and we had a few Gishmake Hoaras that we had, but we wouldn't write in Hoaras Hatmimim in 770. We're a little, we could in 770. So we had, Okay, comes Chayelul, which is the beginning of this man, and we were able to put together enough Hoaras to make a gillion. So we made a gillion for Chayelul, which was in the yeshiva. It gave a meredika koch, because the yeshiva was only open a week and a half, 2 weeks. And on mitamol, a gillion of Hoaras Hatmimim comes. So, of course, it made a nice koch. For Shabbos Bereishis, we gave it another gillion. Now, don't forget Tishrei, there isn't much yeshiva. But we chaptzach on a very interesting chap. One of the Rosh Yeshivas in Morristown at that time was the Rebbe Meir Greenberg. Rebbe Meir Greenberg was from the Erste Pneumium in America. He learned to take a das by Reb Shlomo Hyman. He went on Meredika going. And I started talking to him. First of all, he was what happened was the first time I met him, he tells him, oh, you're Garelik. One second, so you're Bessie Posner's son. He came to Chicago. When my Zayda was in Chicago, my mother then was 3 years old. And he used to pick up my mother. He was a babysitter. And he even told me that one time, he had a beard. And he asked my mother, who's dein Bord? She was 3 or 4 years old, I don't know. And she said, da geht nicht regen, wie soll gehen a Bord, But I'm saying, so the moment I came to him, this was, So we started talking about, his connection with the Rebbe. And this guy was a fountain of information. Fountain. So I told him, look, we're doing Hoaras Hatmimim. Why don't you write the Hoaras? You have so much. He gave us a Hoara for Shabbos Bereishis, like a 4 or 5 page Hoara. The minig is to be by the Rebbe that Friday night, the Rebbe used to come down to Daven, Ma'ariv, those years, the Lamets. From the Rebbe used to open up the Siddur, start L'chun Ranana. And, davening Friday night is, takes time. And about 2-3 minutes into Ma'ariv, the Rebbe would take out the likud, the Rebbe had in the back of the Siddur, take out the likud, and the Rebbe would read the likud with his hands like this on the stander, his feet, standing. After Boye V'Sholem, that's when the Rebbe would close the likud and continue Ma'ariv. But the Rebbe used to read the likud. That Friday night, the Rebbe took out the Hoaras Hatmimim, and we saw the Rebbe was reading Meir Greenberg's Hoara.
It was in Likutei Sichos.
No, Hoaras Hatmimim.
No, but it was in the Hoara was on Likutei Sichos.
Sure, sicher. No, everything was on Likutei Sichos. Everything was on Likutei Sichos. Ad Kedi Kach, I'll give you an example. There was a certain Hoara that he wrote about Yom Tevuach, about after Shavuos, the day after Shavuos, something called Yom Tevuach. And he told me the story that this was in the early Chafs. He came to Kershel Bracha he used to live in Patterson, New Jersey. So right after Yom Tov, they would take the car and come for the end of the Fabrengen. Him, Schomberg Gordon from Maplewood, New Jersey. They would all drive in from New Haven. They used to drive in because the Fabrengen used to go till midnight, and then Kershel Bracha. So they would chaparein and get part of the Fabrengen. And I once came from Pittsburgh like that. I was in Pittsburgh, Simchas Torah Lametes. Right after Yom Tov, took a flight, ran to 770. I thought I'll come to the end of Kershel Bracha. It was still middle of Fabrengen. Yeah. Okay? So the Rebbe spoke about a whole thing. Because the Rebbe used to say a sicha for the kinus Torah for the next day. After Yom Tov, Lubavitch is a kinus Torah. And he says he went by Kershel Bracha, so the Rebbe told him, "Nu mistame morgen by the kinus Torah, they'll be mechabed you to speak. You'll speak about what I spoke about." Now, I don't know if he was there b'shas ma'asim when the Rebbe discussed the sicha, or if he heard Chazar or whatever it was, but the next day, So, we told him, Ad Rebbe, write down what you said by the kinus Torah, based on the sicha. At that time, nobody had the hanach of that Fabrengen. So the only information that you had about that sicha was from the Hoaras Hatmimim that Meir Greenberg wrote, what the Rebbe said. You understand what I'm saying?
So he wrote down something from years later.
Yeah. No, he had notes already from B'shas Maaseh. But he gave us a beautiful Hoara that the Rebbe said, kach v'kach v'kach v'kach, and he added nefche midulei, And so what I'm saying is that the Hoaras Hatmimim, okay, when we saw that the Rebbe took out the Hoaras Hatmimim instead of the likud.
You were there?
Of course I was there. I wasn't watching. What happened was, there was a younger man, he's now in Eretz Yisrael, Sosever, a brother to the Sosever from the sefarim. We used to call him Hameiri. He used to give out something called Beis Chayenu. He used to stand like this, watching the Rebbe, every single move of the Rebbe. The moment he saw that the Rebbe took out the Hoaras Hatmimim. He came running to me. He says, Levi, go over. And I saw that the Rebbe is reading the Hoaras. But I was able to see from the typing, I saw that it says Ha'ara. When we saw that the Rebbe took out the Hoaras Hatmimim instead of the Likud, that made us make the decision we are going to make Hoaras Hatmimim every 2 weeks. Every community consider every 2 weeks. I have on a very simple answer. I took all the Hoaras Hatmimim from Morristown and from New York. I went through all the questions that were asked and no answer was given. And every week I used to put on the wall a whole bunch of questions. When you have something what to work with, can then. And that's what you'll see in the Hoaras Hatmimim Morristown. You'll see there's a question. Der Antwort das sein, der Antwort das sein, der Antwort das sein. Aber stutzach. Comes the night, or now, when are we going to work on Hoaras Hatmimim? Thursday night. We work for like 6-7 hours on the Teuchen. Then I type, takes me at least 4 or 5 hours to type, because you did it on a typewriter and a head and a hand, and he says I push it. The next morning, we had to run to Manhattan, from Morristown to Manhattan, to a printing place, because in Crown Heights there wasn't yet any printing places yet. The only place was Vadla for Tzasichas, but of course I couldn't do it there. In Manhattan and Chamber Street, 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And then from there, I used to go to Crown Heights and bring the Hoaras Hatmimim to the Rebbe.
Shabbos.
Yeah, Friday afternoon. We're sitting Thursday night Noyach. Ma'alti, myself, and we're preparing for next week's Hoaras Hatmimim. Start preparing, so this way. Mitamol we saw, now the minimum pages for Hoaras Hatmimim needed a minimum of Yud Aleph Amudim in order to look like a normal Chtichorilis kabin. You can't make something less than 11 pages. Mitamol we saw that we have enough for 11 pages. So now we started thinking, should we give it out for this Shabbos or not? If we give it out for this Shabbos, that means we gave out Bereshis, we gave out Noach, then you have to give out every week. If we won't, we'll give out Lechachos every 2 weeks. On the other hand, the Rebbe read it last week. No, that we're going to have to work 10 times harder because every week we're going to have to. So we decided, this was 12 o'clock at night, 12:30 at night. A little shishi, we're always up all night anyways. So we figured we'll call Melech, Rebbe Melech Tzibel. He was the head of the Mareches. We'll ask him. 12, you could call Rebbe Melech at 12, at 1, at 2, at 3, no problem. So we called him up and we told him. Rebbe Melech says, was heißt? Sicher darf man Arizgem. Like, no question. And he knew that by saying that, he's taking upon himself a lot of work because he used to also write Hoaras. And don't forget, by the way, just so people should know, before the Rebbe used to give out the Likud, there were a few people that looked it over. And he was one of them. They used to send it to Morristown. He used to look it over. He used to give his Hoaras. Rebbe Melech Tzibel was, you need a separate podcast for Rebbe Melech Tzibel.
He was my mashpia too.
What, was your mashpia too? Oh, okay. So you'll have plenty. So we gave out the Hoaras Hatmimim for that week. You cannot, today it's very hard to explain it, but those days, this was not a revolution. The mother of all revolutions. Hoaras Hatmimim, Morristown, 2 weeks in a row. 770, Ksachakel makes it every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. And Morristown alone used to do it once a month. I even heard that the Mareches of Hoaras Hatmimim, the Bochrim, they went to that hall of 770. They should talk to that hall of Morristown, that it's a chutzpah. I'm telling you, it was lebedik and freilich. But that's it. That was the push. And we made a hachlote that we're not going to Chas v'Shalom use time of Seder. We're going to use the Seder at night for Seder Sichus. And the Melech called us over and he told us, if you need any other time.
Seder Sichus.
Yeah.
After Seder.
After Seder, sure, at night.
So that's how Seder Sichus started? The whole thing in Yeshiva, Seder Sichus? That's where it comes from?
We started on this concept, if I'm not mistaken.
All the Yeshivas have after.
When I don't think there was something before that.
Seder's done at night. All the Yeshivas have Seder
Don't
Sichus.
forget, those days Likutei Sichos was only till Chelik Ches, Zayin. There wasn't yet. No. And then, especially, as I said, I used to put up questions. So Bamela, this gave a Meredith Chayes, and we gave out every week. Lech Lecho, Vayera, Chayesoro. Now, I don't remember which Shabbos, if it was Vayera or Chayesoro, one of the first weeks. And like after the 4th or the 5th week. Melech calls us over, Reb Alter Bucket and myself. What's your mother's name? So I said, why? She says, because every year he sends into the Rebbe the names of the Mareches, of Hoaras Hatmimim. I said, do me a favor. Don't give my name. I don't know if the Rebbe is going to be happy or not, because the Rebbe knows what it takes to give out this. And my name is going to go in as the guy who wastes his time, which I really don't. I do keep this darim and everything, but it may not look so. He told me, don't worry. Af mein achrayes. All right, af mein achrayes beseder. So we gave him our names. That week, we gave into the Rebbe two things. He gave into the Rebbe a duch of the peulos of the bachrim, p'tzayim things, learning, all kinds of things. And separately, he gave about the Hoaras Hatmimim. And he got, those days, the Rebbe used to answer, b'derech klal, on these general duchim. The Rebbe used to have these papers that said, niskabel v'tach. I received a thank you. Bismichus le, let's say it was Bismichus le Yutis Kislev, Bismichus to whoever the Chag, and a word about that, Asker Alatzian. So the Rebbe used to take, instead of writing on each one, the Maskiris used to prepare for the Rebbe this Tzetalach, and the Rebbe used to take one of these and attach it that this was the answer to that duch.
The Maskiris had already the language for that appropriate time.
The Rebbe used to prepare a language, because the Rebbe used to get duchim, Blian Hora, Baruch Hashem, from about Chabad, from everywhere. So the Rebbe used to, as their answer, instead of writing every single time, because it takes time, the Rebbe would attach one of these tzetalach. And every few days or every 2 weeks, the nusach would change. So here, when these two things went in, the Rebbe attached to tzetalach, niskabel v'tach. But the one on the Hoaras Hatmimim, the Rebbe added 2 words, b'ksavyat kodshe, ashrei chelkom. So, of course, we had no question, this is the right thing. I don't remember if it was the 4th or the 5th or the 6th week, but it was one of those first weeks. I came into 770 with the Hoaras Hatmimim a half hour before Shabbos. Now, the Seder those days was that the Rebbe used to get the mail from, Maskirim used to bring in at specific times. On Friday afternoon, about a half hour before Shabbos, approximately an hour, half hour, I don't remember exactly, the one who used to bring in the mail to the Rebbe was the Reb Shalom Yisrael Chodakov, Rabbi Chodakov's son. Shalom Yisrael there's a lot to talk, Blian Hora, a special person. I came running into 770, and I see Reb Shalom Yisrael walking out from Gan Eden Atachten. So I know I missed getting into the Rebbe before Shabbos. I was devastated. I don't want Chas v'Shalom the Rebbe to think that we didn't give out a gillion. On the other hand, it's done. I can't go. I'm not going to go knock on the Rebbe's door. Chas v'Shalom. So I went over to Rabbi Groner. I begged him. He says he doesn't know. He'll see, because he usually doesn't go in on whatever. He said, give it to me and then I'll see what I could do. Comes Ma'ariv, and the Rebbe took out the liquid. I literally didn't sleep a whole night. I pushed it. I was almost ready to go over to the Rebbe Shabbos morning and say, Rebbe, I would just want you to know that the gillion came out and I gave it. Afazevite, but I decided I'm not going to do that. No. Comes Shachris, and I get this sauce that comes and calls in the middle of Shachris. The Rebbe then used to sit by many parts of it because it was ready after Tav Shel Ches. This was the following year, Tav Shel Ches. He says the Rebbe walked in, opened up the Siddur, and the Rebbe said, from Hoidu till Nishmas, as I gesagt, the Rebbe sat down, read the Hoaras Hatmimim until Baruch. It was obvious. It couldn't be more obvious. So that was a very big koch. Hoaras Hatmimim in Morristown, in Alateda, started the following year in Tavshim. But this was...
it says on each gillion, I think.
What?
They write on each gillion.
What, the number?
Neised
B'shnas Tavshim. What I'm talking about is Tav Shel Ches. This is way before. This is a year before. So these little things that the Rebbe did, it gave a chayes to the whole concept. Verstehst? And it was really nice.
Yeah.
That was that. That was the Tav Shel Ches.
And the Ha'aris and everything in the Sichos that the Rebbe was saying then, that started with Alatera?
That started. I'm not sure exactly which one, but I think that one of the big ones was the following year, when Reb Melech Tzibel wrote a Ha'ara in Parshas Tazria Metzoire about a kvater. If a meuberes could be a kvater. And the Rebbe spoke a Sicha then, and which is printed now in Likutei Sichos, Chelik Rabbeis, Parshas Tazria. I think that was the first time that the Rebbe... Then there was a period of time when the Rebbe B'chlal said by Fabringen, the Mezol Schreiben, the Hoaras Shailis, and then the Rebbe will pick one and discuss it. After that, there was a lot of things. In our year...
In the mid-mems, the Rebbe is addressing
Yeah.
the Hoaras.
That's a very tough mem. That's a very tough.
Yeah.
In our year.
And
But
the Rebbe is usually not happy with the...
das kann sein.
I mean... I don't know
Yeah,
if
no,
not happy.
there was always in a Geschmack way. Versteht
Yeah, exactly. Like...
Wenn man spalt der Haare, man trägt vergessen wegen die Kopf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Rebbe says, yeah.
Another very interesting thing that we did then in Tafshil Lamed Tes was, don't forget, computers then was new. It wasn't yet. We managed to give out a gillion for Yud Aleph Nissen of over 70 pages. The Rebbe then turned 75 or 76. Ayin Vav, I think it was. And we decided to make a gillion of Ayin Vav Amudim. Okay? And to bind it and make a mafteach inyanim in the front. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. If you give a look at the first Likut to shlichus'n, you in the front page, when it tells you the Likutim, it only says Parshat Tazria, page, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dal. Doesn't say the Teichen of the Sikha. Later they started putting in the Teichen. We did that in Morristown. When we gave out a gillion, in the front we wrote Parshat Va'era. We wrote the Teichen of what the Ha'ara is, and then the page. After that, they started doing that in all the sefarim. When they,
So not just the title, but the title.
Right, not just the right. We wrote like the teichen of what it is, and that's when I look at the sichos. It'll tell you. It tells you like in a line or two what it is. If you look at the kutzes before that, it wasn't. We started that concept, and then the minig used to be in Yud Aleph Nissen that people were able to go to the Rebbe. Not the Rebbe requested that anybody who gave out a kavitz or whatever, they should give it over to the Rebbe. So we went and we gave the Rebbe a bound Hoaras Hatmimim of that half a year with a sefer like this, with a mafteach inyanim. I worked through the night in Yanker Shlomo Goldberg. Zoller haben a yeride back lamata, and we gave to the Rebbe a beautiful sefer. You know, all the Hoaras with a mafteach, with everything. By the way, I forgot to say, when I was in Ocean Parkway, I heard that the Rebbe spoke to them about keftzim. Now I was then 16 years old, and we were in Beis Medrash. And I told the Rosh Hashiva and the Menal, Rabbi Tenenbaum, I'd like to give her a kavitz. The Rebbe wants kavitz. Even though we're young, we'll still do whatever we can. So we wrote Pilpulim. The Elter Bachrim, the system used to be, there were Elter Bachrim learning in Ocean Park from 770, and the Rebbe would come and give them shiurim at night. So the first gillion that we gave out in Ocean Park, it was Tafshil Lamed Vav. And I went then to Balshan Printing to do it. It was before computers. And they, with the linotype with the whole thing and whatever. And I remember I came then to Schusterman to print it. And I walked into the shop and I said, I would like to print a kavitz. And I showed them what I want to do. Yeah. And then, fine. So I left it by them. I came back the next day to see what's going on. It's not computers. This is linotype. This is every letter becomes in lead, and you have to put it's a whole story. I walked into the printing place, and just he later became my grandfather, my wife's grandfather. So he looks at me from far. His place was in the back over there. He sees me, and he saw that I came Keilu to see what's going on. So he's a blockade. So he goes, Hine Baal Hachale Meis Halozeh Ba. You're dreaming. What, are you coming today from yesterday? Are you? Anyway, but the Pale we managed to give out the contrast there in Gillian. But I was ashamed to go. They said you have to go over to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said then Yud Aleph Nissen Tafshil Lamed Vav. I was ashamed, so I asked one of the Elter Bachrim to go with me, and that was Rebbe Hirschel Volasov, Zangesund. So there's a picture of how we're both by the Rebbe, but he is actually giving the Hoaras Hatmimim to the Pilpul Hatmimim. And as a matter of fact, you'll see something very interesting there. One of the Elter Bachrim that came then to Ocean Parkway was Reb Moshe Wiener, Hadras Ponim Zakon. And I asked him if he has anything to write. And he said, yeah. And he gave me 3 pages about beard. And that later became the movie to his sefer. At that time, they had no dream of giving out the sefer yet. But that was the beginning of that. So there's a lot of interesting history behind all. You look at a countries, but really there's a lot of history behind it.
Came from somewhere.
There's a lot of beautiful Pepulim in Chassidus, because Rebbe used to do with the Bachrim, which is very, very Geschmack stuff. And every year since then, I don't know if they give out every year still, but at least then the Rebbe requested it, so we gave it out.
Okay, so that's
should
be an inspiration for the Bachrim to write Pepulim.
Let me make it very, very clear. A Bacher was learned, I'm not talking about Niglech, not start making. the hana that the Rebbe has from seeing a bocher was kocht in learning. I'm not talking about the story that the Gruzman says, the Rebbe said, Mavisna Shagasari. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Poshet, the cup licked in learning. To the Rebbe, that's what you call nisav. That was the Rebbe's taiva. To a bocher was kocht and then versteht sich, and then we do it in Likud Sicher, so you sort of La Foshelo, this is the top. Because I had that chush, Baruch Hashem, in Tashalametes in the summer, we opened up in Italy a Yeshiva's Kites, Levi Yitzchak. There were 2-3 years there was no Gan Yisrael. It was a whole story, whatever. And
in Parksville?
No, in Italy.
Oh,
in Italy. Okay. There was something, because we used to always rent a different place every couple of years. And one time, I don't know exactly what happened or something, so we made Yeshiva's Kites. So we had all the boys, L'chalapachis, and we opened up Yeshiva's Kites near Milan. At the end of that Yeshiva's Kites, I gave it a kavitz. We managed to put it together, and we called it Share Roimi. You know, because the Rebbe always spoke about Share Roimi. And I remember just an interesting, after the Pinya Korf story with Satmar, etc. So a lot of the Satmar in Galite started opening up a little to find out what Lubavitch is all about. So 2 guys, they happened to be in our house, and they saw this kavitz, and they wrote Pieve di Camaiore, Italia. And one tells the other, you see, Mezakta, give a look in a place that nobody ever heard of. They give out Tatum, you know, it was just, that was another thing.
The Rebbe himself said about Hoaras that if there's such a thing, Ki'ilu, that Lubavitch is a chesaron in learning.
That was talking about kavtzim.
Look at the kavtzim.
Sure, look at the kavtzim, they come out first. Sure. Sicher. Okay. After 2 years of Morristown, which is I learned in Morristown, Tafshalamet Chesed, Tafshalamet Tes. Shvuas Tafshalamet Tes, I was in Italy. Actually, I went home for Pesach, and I stayed in Italy. I didn't come back right after that because I had issues with the army, the Italian army, a whole story. Nothing terrible, but I had to stay in Italy. And
Italian army.
I'm sorry?
Italian army,
yeah.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. So I had to stay there. Now, before I left to Italy, I told the Rosh Yeshiva that year was Reb Zalman Vlashansky was the Rosh Yeshiva. I was there the last year of Reb Shmuel Heber and the first year of Reb Zalman Vlashansky. And I was very close to him because I knew him not from Paris, etc. So right before Pesach, I told him that I'm going to...
You knew him from Paris?
I went to a few visits when I was young. When I was younger. Yes. I went there in 1969. I was there for a little while. I went there in 1973. Tavshikov Test, Tavshalam Gimel. A few times, yeah. So I told him that I'm going home for Pesach, and I don't know when I'm going to be coming back. And at that time, I was schon angefangen kochen, the shlichus'n to Miami. Those days, there was Australia, Miami, New Haven, and Seattle. These were the 4 yeshivas at that time. So now was the time for Miami. And we knew that Sfira time, Shavuos time, right after Shavuos, around that time, there's going to be the shlichus'n to Miami. So I told Reb Zalman, I'm going to be in Italy. I don't know why I felt that there's a good possibility I would be one of the people going. And I told him. So he said to me, what are we going to do if you're in Italy? I said, a phone call doesn't even cost a dime. You'll call me collect. You'll tell me this was going on. And I'll tell you, can I come, can't I come, or whatever, you know. Beside I was home. And I used to get, every week in the mail, I used to get the Hoaras Hatmimim. They used to send me the Hoaras Hatmimim that came out. Comes Erev Shavuos, and I get in the mail the Hoaras Hatmimim from Morristown, and I see in the back a Hakdasha, L'shlichus'n Hatmimim Mashluchim to Miami. All my friends on that page, Nisht I knew that it happened, Nisht I knew that they're going garnished. I'm sitting there in Italy, and I'm watching this Hakdasha here. That's it. All my friends are gone, and I'm stuck back there in, who knows, I'm going to go. Where am I going to go? Yeah, maybe New Haven, but Miami. It was Australia and Miami. These were the 2 prestigious. I was the whole Shavuos, I was devastated. Devastated. Comes Mitzvah Shavuos about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the phone rings in my house. I was up for some reason. I pick up the phone, and who was it? My chevre, my friends in Miami. They're calling me and telling me that they just heard in New York that this Keshel Baruch after, don't forget, this is Tafshel Lametes. It's after Rebbe's heart attack, Lametes. Everything was anayas by the Rebbe, the Fabringens. There was a Fabringen on Shavuos Bechal that was very happy, and because the Rebbe used to Fabring Motzei Shabbos those days. And Yom Tov, the Rebbe didn't. It was Shabbos. It was Yom Tov. And they told me that it's so lebedik and it's everything mitalig with the Sachen. So, and then they started telling me that this whole thing of Miami went very fast. And now they're in Miami. I was on the phone with them for at least half hour, 45 minutes even, And I'm thinking to myself, Rebbeinu Shalom, what's going to be now? When we're going to, what's it sein? Okay, anyways, I stayed in Italy because I had to do the Yeshivas Kites. Came back in Elul, I'm in 770. And Rabbi Klein comes to me and tells me that they would like me to go to New Haven. Now, I knew that's what's going to happen. But the guys in that group weren't from my class. In Morristown, there were a lot of people came from all over the place. And I told them, listen, do me a favor. If it comes from the Rebbe, obviously, there's no question, right? But if not, I have to admit that I'm not going to be very comfortable or whatever. He says, look, my job is to ask. If you feel like, but if you ask my opinion, I think you should go. I figured, I said, fine, but say that I'll go. In retrospect, I can't thank the Rebbe enough for not having sent me to Miami and for sending me to New Haven. First of all, those 2 years were of the best years of my life, number one. Number two, I don't know if I mentioned to you last time, I came to America in Tafshel Lamed Gimel to stay Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. I came to go to Gan Yisrael. From Gan Yisrael, it was right before my bar mitzvah, then I would go to yeshiva, etc. I came Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, my cousin came to pick me up at the airport, and I went to camp the next day. Came Yud Beis Tammuz, I was sure that everybody's going to New York for the Fabringen, Yud Beis Tammuz. And with them all, I see is tutzach garnished. Nobody's, like the day is going through. The day of, the Fabring is at night. The day is going through like as if nothing's happening. They'll talk about Yud Beis Tammuz, but nobody's talking about going to New York. And I couldn't understand. I just came from Italy. For me, the whole life I was yearning and waiting to come and see, to be by the Rebbe's Fabringen. So I did come for a visit from Purim till Pesach, whatever. But here's Yud Beis Tammuz. So I went over to my counsel. I said, do me a favor. Either I'm going to run away from camp, or I have to be better for bringing. Onke Meises. So we spoke to the Rebbe. Anyways, there was a ride going into New York, and I went for the Fabringen of Yud Beis Tammuz. That was the last time that Shazar came to the Rebbe. I was able to see at least once Shazar with the Rebbe and this and that. Fine. Okay. Came Shabbos Bevorchim. And Mitamola again. Nobody's going. I said, I don't understand. You're 2 hours away from New York. And there's a Fabringen. I couldn't understand it. So, no, but Yud Beis Tammuz, we gave you permission, but now mechanisch does it. What I did was, I found out that there's a car going, station wagon, Rabbi Shem Tov and the assistant head counselor. So what I went, it was a station wagon those days. I went in the station wagon, I hid in the back. In the middle of about an hour into, or half hour into the trip, I picked up my head and he saw me in the rearview mirror. Anyways, I was there for Shabbos Vorchim also. So by me, the concept of being within 2-3 hours of New York and not go to the Fabringen was ogefrekt in Ganzen. Now I was going to New Haven. I said, oh, very good. New Haven's only an hour and a half away. The Rebbe's Fabringen anyways only on Motzei Shabbos. So, perfect. Very good. It's a perfect shlichus'n. I'm an hour and a half away. If I really want to, okay, we went. 2 nights after we got there was a Fabringen that when the Rebbe spoke about Akinov. There was middle of the week. And
Akinov was killed.
Yeah. And I remember we went to Rebbe David Deitch's house Next door there was a television. We were able to see the whole story in Crown Heights. The ganze Meise, he never got killed in the street. It was a whole story.
He was shot walking with his house and film.
And the Rebbe spoke about it by the Fabrengen in the Maimer. The hookups of the Fabrengens were in Reb David Deutsch's house. Reb David Deutsch was the main man in New Haven. A Taira, unbelievable. Exception of a chassid. And we went to his house to listen to the Fabrengen. But I was down. It's the first time. In Italy, I understand I have to listen to Fabrengen on the phone. Here, I'm an hour and a half away, and I have to sit and listen to Fabrengen on the phone. And at one point, Reb David Deutsch came over to me. He says, "Was bist du so verchmuret? Like, what are you so..." So I told him, I'll be honest with you, it's the first time I'm an hour and a half away from 770 and I have to listen to Fabrengen on the telephone. Okay, fine. Goes by 1 week, a second week, a third week. Mitamol comes Shabbos Chav Cheshvan. Tafshim Mem. Comes Motzei Shabbos. I hear the Rebbe Fabrengt on Shabbos. Till then, the Rebbe Fabrengt Motzei Shabbos, besides for Yom Tov. Oh, boy. To me, this was... No, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. The next Shabbos Vorche, there was Fabrengt Motzei Shabbos. But it seemed that this Shabbos Chav Cheshvan was an exception and whatever. Okay, I swallowed it. 2 weeks later was Yud Kislev. We went to New York for Thursday night. There was Fabrengen. And we went back to New Haven. Shabbos was Yud Aleph Kislev. Mitamol, again a Fabrengen. Yud Aleph Kislev. Shabbos. I couldn't. So those Shabbosim that we heard beforehand that there's going to be a Fabrengen Motzei Shabbos, so no problem. Till Shabbos Shmois, the Rebbe Fabrengen Motzei Shabbos. These 2-3 times was mamish an exception. But once we heard that the Rebbe is Fabrengen every Shabbos, I told Anhola, we got to do something here. I cannot sit here and know that there's a Fabrengen. Now, the problem was, not the Rebbe didn't Fabrengen every Shabbos, but a Shabbos when there's Shabbos Avorchim or whatever, when for sure Fabrengen. And I didn't want to make any problems. I wasn't a problematic person. But I said, I have to find an Eitzah here. Then I found out that in Tovshi Chav Hei, when the Rebbe Fabrengt every Shabbos for the Rebbe Tzechana, after Rebbe Tzechana passed away, so in Newark, they started a system that you can't go every Shabbos. So those people who learned Tanya Balpeh or something went, it was a certain system. So I went to the Anhola, because, you see, the Bachrim, there were 2 camps. One camp that said, Daf Yegen, Daf Nishgen. I was the only one that was really, forceful. And the other ones were saying, no, this is a shlichus'n. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berun. Alles an gerecht. There's no... And I must say that this group that we went to New Haven, although we weren't all from the same... Till today, the Av amongst us, you cannot imagine. B'shas ma'aseh, when you're in yeshiva, everybody has their opinions on things. But ultimately, you cannot, we're like, mamish like brothers. Each one with each one. Anyways, so, and Anhola was a little stuck, what do we do here? So I said, you pick, tell me, give me a job to do, Tanya Bab, whatever you want, I'll do it, I'll try. So they came up with the thing that I should learn 2 prakim of Yigeres Atshuva Balpeh per Shabbos. Take an 18-year-old and get him to learn Balpeh, 2 prakim, Yigeres Atshuva. And I did it. I worked like a horse, but I did it. And Ataket Mashal, there was one Shabbos that I didn't go in because it was Shabbos before Lag Baimer. The guy who was in charge of the Lag Baimer parade. He asked me a favor not to go in for Shabbos. He said, because, we have to prepare for the parade over there. New Haven, yeah. So Ataka didn't go in. He asked me for a favor, so Ataka didn't. But I'm saying the other Shabbosim with us. Once I did the whole Igeres Atshuva Balpeh, which was 6 weeks, 2 prakim each, it's 12 prakim. They said, no, you can go whenever you want. And that was that. But that was Shabbosim. Purim Tavshim Mem Aleph. Purim that year was on a Friday. And something very special happened. The Rebbe came into Daven Mincha Friday afternoon. There was almost nobody there because all the Bokrim are Mivtzoim. All the people are running around Shachmanis, and it's Erev Shabbos in the afternoon. And I'm in New Haven, giving out, going on Mivtzoim, like everybody else, Friday morning. Don't ask me why. I was going with my Taire Chaver, and this was about 11 or 12 o'clock. In middle of Mitzvah, don't ask me why, I told my chaver, I got to run. Ich muss laufen. I have to run. He says, where? I told him, I have to run. Sei mir gesund. And I ran. I took a taxi. I went to the train station. I took a train. I ran to New York. I came out of the train station. It was about 3:15.
The Metro North to Grand Central.
Yeah,
to
the whole
subway.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
That's my route to get.
To get home today.
Connecticut. No?
Yeah. I think there were. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. I come out of the train station, and there's nobody there. It's deserted. Friday afternoon, weißt doch, still.
The subway, you mean?
The subway. I came out on Kingston Avenue, and I am thinking, should I go into 770 first, or should I go to 1480, because I also had a bed over there, and check something. And Lepoil, as I'm thinking, yeah, nicht, mit Tamol, I see the Zeli Gottlieb. Engerman, he has a lot of kids. I mean, now they're all mothers and bubbies. But at that time, he was with his little daughters. And I see he's running. He tells me, Levi, the Rebbe is verbringing upstairs. These words he said, the Rebbe is verbringing upstairs. To yourself, Friday afternoon, the Rebbe is verbringing upstairs. The last time the Rebbe verbringed upstairs was in Tafshin Chaf, and now it's Tafshin Mem Aleph. So I ran into 770. I come in. I see, as soon as you come in, the door is closed to the Zal. The door is never closed to the Zal those days. Who closed it?
The door,
Today, unfortunately, it's closed. I wish
you
they
mean
would.
where the Rebbe give dollars, by the magnet?
Yeah, sure. I wish they would open it back up. I don't know who
closed since Chav Zayin Adar, I think.
The Rebbe says, that door has to be open, okay? To me, it's like you're closing the Beis HaMikdash. I'm sorry, today the Beis HaMikdash is closed. That door has to be open. For that was our connection to the Rebbe. When I used to sit there, that was the... Anyways, whatever. That door is closed. The door in the middle of the hallway is closed. Everything's closed. But he told me there's a Fabrengen. So I figured the door is closed. It must be something. I didn't know anything yet. So I went to the door in the middle of the hall. There was no handle on. I think even today there is no handle to it. You have to open up from this. Somebody push. With alle keiches, I stuck my fingers in. I opened the door. And right as soon as you come in, there's a table there. And I see a whole bunch of people standing. I think Rabbi Krinsky was one of the people on that table. And I hear the Rebbe's voice. And I said, my first thing was, I'm not going to miss this for nothing. There was no place on the table. There was no nothing. And I remember from the pictures, where did the Rebbe bring upstairs? Under the window, that goes to the next room, under where there's Sidurim there, yeah. I didn't want to take any chances. I went under the people. Ich gekrochen like a mouse. I went straight until that area, and I came out. You know where I came out? I was almost touching the Rebbe. I was touching the chair. Because I came out right by the chair. I didn't realize. And I see who's standing right behind me? Harav Chadikov. So I'm standing now between Rabbi Chadikov and the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is in the middle saying the Maimer. I remember the words the Rebbe was saying, Al Totzar Esmoyev. I remember that.
Pesach is right around the corner. With all the stress that exists a whole year, for many people, Pesach adds significantly to that. Between the matzahs, the wine, the clothing that's needed for yourself, for your wife, for your children, we know that there's a big mitzvah of Mois Chitim that everyone takes part of to alleviate these stress points for those that are in need. In fact, the Rebbe would encourage, from Purim onwards, and at many occasions, the Rebbe would encourage people to give to Mois Chitim. In fact, the Rebbe had his own Mois Chitim fund. Maskiris would have a list of those in need that would receive funds from the Rebbe's Mois Chitim in an honorable way. This fund continues till today. This past year, over $250,000 were given out to the needy before Pesach. There is so much more that can be done, so many more people can be helped, and nobody should be turned away due to lack of funds. You can be part of the Rebbe's Mois Chitim fund by going to magbis.org, that's magbis.org, and clicking on the tab for Mois Chitim. Do that today and be part of this great mitzvah and join the Rebbe's Mois Chitim fund.
Now, Rabbi Chadikov knew very well who I am, even though I was a bacher. He knew exactly who I am because I used to go into him a lot because of my father's things in Italy. And here, I'm trying to move. You couldn't move. The place was like sardines. And I felt bad for him because now I'm totally blocking him. But I couldn't move anywhere. So that's it. I was stuck there, and that was that. And I was right there when the Rebbe, the whole thing took like, maybe 10 minutes. The Maimer, I think, was 7 or 8 minutes. Then the Rebbe asked for wine. I remember Rabbi Mentlik was there. And the Rebbe drank them from a plastic cup, like this one. But the Rebbe, it was 2 cups, I remember. And he filled it up, and the Rebbe went like this. To drink, off the table, off the chair. Yeah. And I was 5 inches away, kipshutai. And the Rebbe drank one. I think the Rebbe asked for a second cup. Then the Rebbe said, whatever. But anyways, I chapped rein that maimer. Don't ask me why. I was in the middle of Mitzvah, and I ran, and that was that. So that was memalef. The Rebbe helped me.
You have pseudochnistic chushen.
Ich weiß nicht. The Rebbe hat mir geholfen that all the years that I was in New York, versteht sich, or not far from New York, I missed one thing only when I was in Ocean Parkway. I missed Tafshin Lamed Hey after Shavuos when the Rebbe gave Tanyas to the people in England outside 770. That's the only thing that I remember that I missed. All other things, if I was an hour and a half, 2 hours within New York, and also a second, I was in Gan Yisrael Shabbos Chazoin Lamed Hey. That's also I did. Because the whole story I got stuck because of Miftzayim, and I probably couldn't make it back to New York. Nobody knew if there's going to be a Fabringen anyways. But these are the only 2 things that I missed. Otherwise, I was there. The Rebbe hat mir geholfen every day. Now, it's something just cute. When I was in New Haven, so I was thinking, I'm an hour and a half from New York. In theory, if I want, I could see the Rebbe every day. In theory. Those days in Taf Shalamet Tes, the Rebbe used to go home every night, approximately 12:15, 12:30. It was a Seder.
At night?
In that period, yeah.
Morning, whatever.
At night. Taf Shem Mem.
A.M.
Yeah, P.M. After midnight.
A.M.
Yeah. Right now, I didn't have a license. Those days, it was a whole tunu by Bochrim. You don't get a license when you're 18. Till you need it.
I think it's from the Rebbe.
What?
I think it comes from the Rebbe, I think.
The earlier years, it was from the Rebbe, yeah. But no, all the guys in my group who were older than me, they all had licenses. Most of them. Anyways, so I decided I got a license. New Haven was much easier to get it than New York anyways. Right near Yeshiva, 2 blocks away, there was a place called Rent a Clunker. That's what it was called. Rent a Clunker. They had cars there. For $10, you get a car. $10 a day. Includes everything, insurance, also the bills, just to make sure that the gas is full. And you get it full and you give it back full. I used to go sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, after Seder, Shashtil, right? And there was only one guy in Yeshiva that knew. I used to go out. I used to go to this Rent a Clunker. And I made up with him. All the cars over there were Taka Clunkers. There was one car that was new. I made up with him. I need that one because I got to go to New York and back. And he used to leave the glove compartment. The key was in the glove compartment. I used to go. I used to take that car.
Without a license?
No, I had a license. No,
you
I got a license.
Got
gemacht a license. Because I always used to ask guys I heard that tonight there's something in 770, so I used to ask them. I used to pay. I figured, enough tavis. I want to do it myself in Gendik. I used to get into this clunker. Used to go to New York. Used to see the Rebbe go home. Come back to Yeshiva. Nobody knew I went. Nobody knew I came back. It was still in Gendik. And this was
every night?
Not every night, but at least once or twice a week. I used to do that for $10, I was able to go. It was even cheaper than going with the train. It was, and I could go on my own time, and it's 2 blocks away from Yeshiva.
There's no traffic.
And I went to New York, and I was on Mechaya. I used to. That was that.
You should know, I remember hearing this from you when I was a young bacher. You were standing outside 770, and you once told me this.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
It's a Katarishan, I remember.
Kenzai. Yeah, so that was part of the Chavayot of New Haven. Yeah, then I had some stories with the Rebbetzin that year.
Why? What happened?
There's a few stories, but what happened then was...
You didn't have like an open connection with the Rebbetzin before?
No. Not only I didn't want to have. To us, you have to remember, the Rebbetzin was not off limits. It's a different ball. Ada Yom, myself, my friends from Yenetzeiten, you know that Ada Yom we don't walk on President Street on the side of the Rebbe's house. Everything opened up after the Rebbetzin passed away. The Rebbe's house. But till Tafshim Mem Ches, the Rebbe's house was not off limits. Wie kom ich to go, not to the Rebbe's house, on the Rebbe's block? I don't know if I can explain it today. But until today, I cannot walk. The only time I used to go across was either when we used to do shmire for the Rebbe's house, if you know what that means. In a few years, for a few years, when the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were home, Shabbos Beker. During the day, there was somebody there, official, with a car, with a dust for shmire because of the stories. But Shabbos, the house next door belonged to Rabbi Levi Garelik. So there was a door, there was a window that you could see the front of the house very well from there. So 2 Bachrim were there 24 hours.
On Shabbos.
Shabbos Yom Tov.
So you used to do that?
So we used to have mishmeres. And there were no verbringens. For Shabbos, everything was Motzei Shabbos. Now, Tashem Mamal, there was already verbringen. So during verbringen, of course, there was nobody there, but otherwise, all the other times. So there were a few stories that happened then. First of all, Pesach. Pesach Memalef. First I told you what happened Purim, yeah? Now comes Pesach. There was a verbringen in Yud Aleph Nissen, Yud Beis Nissen, and Yud Gimel Nissen. 3 days in a row. And by the way, there was Birchas Achama before also. It's all Tavshim Amalek. There was a heavy year. It was a
Dalit Nissen.
Dalit, yeah. But it's all the same weeks. You know, Purim, Birchas Achama. My sister got married actually the night before. And then came Pesach. So it was Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel was a verbringen. The night of B'dikas Chometz, because of the Sefer Torah of the kids. The Rebbe Yud Aleph Nissen Mem Aleph started Tzivus Hashem on Simchas Torah. And then the Sefer Torah for the kids started Yud Aleph Nissen. So on Yud Beis Nissen was again a verbringen, to tell the people that the Sefer Torah started. Yud Gimel again. It was a lebendige Freilach. That year was Erev Pesach Shechol Yos B'Shabbos. No, when it's Erev Pesach Shabbos, when you daven Shachris? 7 o'clock in the morning. So we were up 3 days already. At 7 o'clock in the morning was Shachris. And we were up already for 3 days. Right? Because Yud Aleph Beis Yud Gimel verbringen. We used to be up all night after verbringen, going over the verbringen, typing the verbringen, etc. And we had to prepare the kitchen, Bachrim. Then Shabbos morning, we had to be ready 7 o'clock. Noch mikveh, noch alts, for davening. And then, what did we eat for breakfast? We had no chametz. We got chametz. So we made kiddush. And then we took a second cup of wine and this was a Pesach dike wine for Stetzach. So, you know what we felt like. And then, mitamol, I was 70 with my head down, gedremmelt. Mitamol, comes my shwager, David Krinsky, and tells me, Levi, don't go away from 770. Stay here. I said, why? Is there verbringen? He says, stay here. So the first thing which I did, I ran to 4014. I went to some of my good chavedim today, and I told them, they were all sleeping. They were all pushed to bed. And I said, get up and come to 770. Anyways, the Rebbe said there's going to be a verbringen, but they shouldn't tell the Olam, not to... Lepoil, the eunuchs, about a half hour before the verbringen, they gave out the... But I was in 770, no, I didn't miss it. So we had the verbringen, and again, another thing which I didn't miss. Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe went...
What did they have by the verbringen?
Bananas and water.
But they had ready? They had bananas ready?
I think the banana was frozen. I'm not sure. I remember, nobody knew what the Rebbe was going to say l'chaim on. So they had water and bananas. And the Rebbe first ate a piece. The Rebbe ate, and then the Rebbe said, you can look it up in the Anoch, very nice. Einer sitzt und esst, and alle stehen and cooking. So the Rebbe gave it to the Rav, and he said he should do with it whatever he feels is correct, and gave it to the Zalman Shimon. Yeah, and it was a meridik verbringen. I remember the Rebbe spoke about Tzibtzuk Pshutai. And I remember the Rebbe gave a scream, Kemen doch meinen, as Tzibtzuk Pshutai. Sagt der alte Rebbe, nein! Aber Mama is with all the keches, you're able to see how the Rebbe is like this is fighting a war over here. It was meridik. Then at night, the Rebbe came to the Bachrim Seder. Now, I only saw that 3 times. And it had a mazel, because the Seder used to be in 1414. The Seder kitchen is in the basement. Those days it was on the first floor. When you walk to the first floor, they had a big room, 3 long tables. There were 3 kitchens. The first kitchen was a smaller kitchen, which was Pesach kitchen, Fleischike kitchen, and a Milchike kitchen. The Rebbe used to come in. The Rebbe wanted that when the Rebbe comes in, all the Bachrim should be by their place, the Kaira should be ready, and the kos should be full. Now, after Ma'ariv, the Rebbe said a Sicha. So we waited till after the Sicha. After the Sikha, the Rebbe went up to his room, and the Rebbe gave a few matzahs to others, and then he came to the Seder. So we had approximately 7 minutes to bring our matzahs, prepare the kaide, fill up the cause, and all. Now, the Rebbe used to come in. The Rebbe used to first go into the Pesach kitchen. In the Pesach kitchen was the cook, Mrs. Musia. And Mrs. Musia did all this work for Pesach for one thing. For those 2 minutes that the Rebbe will come into her and the Rebbe would say, Gut Yom Tov, or some that would give her a bracha. Yeah, for her this was for the whole year. She lived the whole year from this minute that the Rebbe walked into her, and because all the maskirim and all the people that went together with the Rebbe, they stayed by the door. The Rebbe walked with the 2 bachrim who are the memunim of the kitchen for Pesach. Pesach, the bachrim used to take over the kitchen. So they went with her, with the Rebbe to Musia, since they were the only ones that were there when the Rebbe went to Musia. So it was sort of like a personal thing for her. Then the Rebbe would go through the Fleishike kitchen, which was all covered. Nobody used it on Pesach. Why the Rebbe went in, I have no idea. But that's what it was. And the Rebbe sometimes would point out certain things. Then the Rebbe went to the Milchike kitchen. Then the Rebbe would come out, and the Rebbe would look at the whole room, go, stop somewhere, and that's where he would say the bracha. And every time the Rebbe would stop somewhere else, didn't always stop at the same place. The Rebbe stood geholfen that every time, wherever I sat, that's where the Rebbe stopped. I was on the other side of the table, because some guys would have their back. Now, they didn't have their back to the Rebbe, but they were sitting this side of the table, the other side. So I always made sure to sit on this side where I could see the kitchens. And one time I sat here, one time here, one time here, and each time the Rebbe sat mamish right across and said the Sikh. That time was Motzei Shabbos, and the Rebbe said, he said the bracha, and then the Rebbe said, "Se steht in Shulchan Aruch, as wenn me hebt on Kiddush, yiten ein of baneris." You have to look at the neiris of Shabbos. You have to look at the licht. Bifrat if it's Mitzvah Shabbos, you have to look for Ber Mereish. There were no candles here. In the whole, I guess it was nobody started yet, so nobody thought of it. So the Rebbe said that you have to. So the Rebbe went back to Musia, and she was ganz zudrult. What's the Rebbe coming in for? The Rebbe told her that the Bachrim don't have candles. That she used to have like a little candelabra that she used to light her Yom Tov candles. Her husband, the whole story, in Russia. So the Rebbe asked her if she doesn't mind to lend her candles to the Bachrim, so the Bachrim could have Yiten in a Veneres v'chulam. Fartig. So not everybody understood right away what's happening, right? But then when it came out, so they took a table and a chair and a dust and they put the licht on top, so everybody gets a seat. After the Rebbe left, something very interesting. Musa started crying. I remember she was retired to us. We used to write a letter to the Rebbe. Not only Amol, any time. What are the Shabbos dike Tishtach? We used to pour out the Shabbos dike tablecloth. And then noch gegossen a trer. And how she... And she says she has Bekabola. If you see the Rebbe twice, once after the other, that's it. It's over. Chassidim knew if they went to Yechidus. And then for whatever reason, they went back again. That was the last time. And she said, that's it. The Rebbe's not going to go anymore to the Seder. And I think either that was the last time or the next year was the last time. But she was right that it's not going to go forever. The Rebbe Taki stopped it.
To all the locations the Rebbe stopped?
Yeah, sure. Once it stopped, it stopped. If you wouldn't go to Yeshiva, you wouldn't go anywhere else. And so that was Motzei Shabbos. No, so we're up already 3 nights, a whole day out of Pesach. Motzei Shabbos the Seder. I took Shmira by the Rebbe's house between 6 and 8 in the morning for that Sunday morning. That was my... Okay, because I figured, who's going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning? The day after the Seder, and after all this. And the Rebbe used to go... The Rebbe went home then for Yom Tov. The Rebbe used to say 70 Shabbos. Later, they made the apartment in the back of the library. 70? Till then... The Rebbe used to say instead of 70 Shabbos and the Rebbetzin at home. That's where they made that time. So that's where they made the house behind the library. So then the Rebbetzin, which is another whole parsha. But that Pesach, the Rebbe went home and he walked in the morning. So there were two sets of Bochrim. Two Bochrim, which their job is to be shmira by the Rebbe's house. And then at 8 o'clock, approximately 8:30, two more Bochrim would come, like in the Alte Zeiten, before Lamed Ches, that they would walk behind the Rebbe to 770. I came there, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I ran to the mikveh, and I ran to the house next to the Rebbe for shmira. I was sure there's nobody around for nothing in the morning. I came, and my dear friend, Reb Chaim Majeski, was there. So we're sitting there and doing shmira, and we figured, we'll be there till 8 o'clock, and then the other guys will come and take us over, and then the guys will come. The guys who would wait for the Rebbe to go to 770 would stand on the steps in the house next door, outside. So in other words, because I heard that sometimes the Rebbetzin would check from one of the windows to see if the Bochrim are there. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. Sunday morning, after Erev Shabbos, Erev Pesach Shcholius B'Shabbos, the street was deserted. No Yidden, lehavdil no goyim, garnished. Sunday morning, beautiful day. 7. Metamol, the Rebbe walks out of his house. 7 o'clock in the morning. And we're sitting, me and Chaim, and we saw the Rebbe just walked out. Now the question was, what should we do? Should we go behind the Rebbe? The Rebbe doesn't go himself. There's always two Bochrim behind. On the other hand, there's not going to be any shmira. One can't go. It's past Echadish. So quickly we decided we're going to go behind the Rebbe and then we'll come back. I have to tell you, do you know what it means? You're three people in the street and there's nobody else. It's the Rebbe and the two of us. The Rebbe walked. Pashet, there's a Mashal Melech Basade. The Rebbe is walking. Usually the Rebbe used to walk fast when there's the Eilam, there's the Rebbe walked. I say, Ruik, the Ruik, we saw the Ruikite. The Rebbe went till the corner, then went down to Easter Parkway. Till 770, there was no, and I was thinking, now what, should I run in front of the Rebbe to open the doors? The Rebbe should go off, somebody came and saw, and he saw from far there. So he ran and he opened the door, etc. But that was, it took a good 10, 15 minutes from the Rebbe, because the Rebbe walked slow. And you were able to see, I had such an urge, to have a nice conversation. If I wasn't, no, of course not with the Rebbe and stuff was to so we were behind. But the Rebbe Mamish went Melech Basade. Kipshutai. That was Tavshim Aleph. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you asked me about the Rebbetzin. What happened was like this. I came I used to come for Shabbos, here and there. So in the afternoon, Erev Shabbos, I was in the Zal. There was nobody there. Bochrim Ar Mivtzoim. And one Friday, Rabbi Groner comes into the Zal. The Rebbe used to stay in 770. The Rebbetzin was home at that time still. So he says, Levi, are you busy? I said, for you, I'm not busy. Anyways, he says, could you do me a favor and go to the Rebbe's house to bring a package from the Rebbe's house to here? So I asked him, wait a minute, am I going to see the Rebbetzin? He says, no. The way it works is you go behind the house, you go to the entrance of the kitchen, you knock on the door, and one of the shamashim over there is going to give you it's vaistus, this food for the Rebbe for Shabbos. Now, just for information, until Tav Shel Lamed Ches, one of the shlichus'n that some of the Bochrim had, which I also had sometimes, when the Rebbe used to come to 7:70 in the morning, after that, one of the Bochrim would go to the Rebbe's house. The Rebbe's house in the front, there's two doors. There's the gate and the door. The Rebbetzin would leave between the two doors a bag, which had in it a thermos and some mazenis.
In a weekday?
Weekdays, yeah. So every time a Bachrim, there were some Bachrim that had that job as sort of, I also got it a few times, Baruch Hashem. Anyways, I knew. So I wanted to know if that package is like between the two doors. So he says, no, you go to the back and you knock on the door. So I said, you tell me the Rebbetzin is going to come out? I'm not going. So he said, no, don't worry, just because I had another story a few years before that. I went, I knocked at the door. I think it was Chesed or somebody gave me a package. I took it. I brought it to 770. Comes the next week, and Rabbi Groner comes again. I was again in the Zal. And he says...
You mean the next week?
Next Friday.
Friday, okay.
Yeah, no, Friday afternoon. Okay. I'm in the Zal. And he says, Levi, are you busy? I said, no, of course not. He says, could you do what you did last time? I said, sure, no problem. I went, I knocked on the door, and who came out? The Rebbetzin. This was the second time that it happened to me, because it happened one time in Tav Shel Lamed Tes that I went and brought yogurt right before Yom Tov, whatever, so I saw her then, but then it was...
You brought a delivery?
No, what happened was... No. on the house. What happened was, now maybe before Lamites, I remember it was a Shavuos. It was Erev Shavuos, it was an hour before Shavuos. And Rabbi Groner asked me if I could please run down Kingston Avenue, buy 2 yogurts, and bring them to the Rebbe's house. An hour before Shavuos. I ran down Kingston Avenue, and they told me, go to the back, and there's going to be somebody who's going to open the door. I ran to down, everything was closed, but it's an hour before Shavuos. Down by Empire, there was a bakery, where now there's a cleaners, but there used to be a bakery there. And the guy was cleaning the floors, but the bakery was closed. So I knocked on the door, and the guy says, it's closed. And I went, please. So he came to the door. He says, what do you need? I said, I need 2 yogurts. She says, all right. And he gave me the 2 yogurts. I gave him $2. And I ran. I knocked on the door. And whoops, mitamol was the Rebbetzin. I didn't expect it. It was the first time in my life, that I get to see the Rebbe. I was like, I didn't know what to do. And the Rebbetzin asked me, "Wer dir geschickt?" I think that's what she asked me then. I was in total shock. I didn't know what to do. And I just gave her the yogurt. Then she asked me, "Wie viel hast du gezahlt?" How much you pay? I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. And she felt that I don't want to say how much. So she said, "Nein, für die yogurt darf ich zahlen." There was, and I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. I was so in shock. And she went. She was smiling the whole time. Like everything's just fine. Relax. And I think she asked me what my name is. And I said, Garelik, Posner, because I figured she knows my grandmother very well, and she heard, my father. Anyways, so she went to her purse, she took out her wallet, and she took $2, and she asked me, "It does given mehr?" And I went like this, no. So she gave me the $2, and that was that. That was I think it was Tavshel Lamites. I think it was Lamites, whatever. But then, this time when I went and I gave it to her, so then she asked me, "Wer dir geschickt hat auf Groner?" So I said, yeah, and she gave me the package. She said something else, whatever. And that was that. I went. Now, at that time, 99% of Lubavitch never saw the Rebbetzin, myself included. Okay? She was unbelievable how she managed to, keep herself. I had a very, very good friend, who was from France, one of my chaverim. And I knew that he would appreciate to be able to see the Rebbetzin once. So I told him confidentially, I said, look, if you want, there may be a possibility how you could see the Rebbetzin. Come with me to the Zal on Friday. If Rabbi Groner will ask me again to go, because I didn't want to tell anybody that I saw the Rebbetzin, it was a private thing. Come with me. And if the Rebbetzin opens the door, not one of them mashbakim, so you'll be able to see. And either that Friday or the next Friday, Rabbi Groner again asked me if I could go. I said, sure. So he came with me. We got to the door, knocked on the door, and the Rebbetzin came out. So I was just, standing there. She already knew who I am, from. She went to get the package, and sort of she turned and she saw there was somebody else there. But he did not have this awe for the Rebbetzin the way I grew up. For him, it was a little different. And seemingly, the Rebbetzin asked him who he is. And the Rebbetzin knew very well his grandparents. Oh, you're dead. And he started, they were talking in French. And the Rebbetzin was ecstatic. She's talking to somebody in French, to a friend of hers. And I stood there on the side. I wanted to bury myself. I stood like this on the side with the package, and she was looking back and forth. Funny, the whole conversation took 2 minutes, whatever. But he was nuts, and she, they were like buddy. And she enjoyed it, no question about it. Then we left, and I asked him, "How did you do this?" He says, "Why not? Look how happy she was." So I figured, all right, nicht is nicht. Then I decided, Atkan, I'm not going back there anymore. If Rabbi Groner asked me again, I'm not going to be in the Zal, so it's over. I didn't say the story to anybody. He didn't say it to anybody. 3 or 4 weeks later, one of the Meshamshim Bakodesh came over to me and says, "Were you by the Rebbetzin a couple of weeks ago?" So I said, "Yeah." "Why?" She said, "Because the Rebbetzin told me, der Garelik, a lebediker Bocher." I didn't do a thing. I stood there on the side like this. The second time, I didn't even open my mouth. She knew already what I'm here for, who sent me, who I am, and fertig.
So the Rebbe's mother said, a ganze
Woche.
Woche, and the Rebbe
She said, a lebediker Woche. Yeah, she said a lebediker Woche. That was then. When I became a chosn later, this was a very tough Memhei. 4 years later, I became a chosn to Rabbi Klein's daughter. And Rabbi Klein has a son. His name is Yankee. Today is Harav Yankov Klein in Moscow, one of the greatest shlichus'n. But at that time, he was before Bob Sherenish. So one of the things that I used to do, he lived right on the block, 3 doors away from 770. My Kale wasn't home. She was in school, teaching, whatever. So I used to go to my shviga, and sometimes I used to take Yankee out. Give her a couple of minutes of vacation.
And when you're a chassan?
When I was a chassan. One time I had to go to the bank on Eureka Avenue. There's a bank, a city bank. So I told my shviga, look, I'm going to the bank. If you want, I'll take him out. It'll take me at least 45 minutes, going, coming. She said, sure, gesundheit. And I went to Eureka Avenue. I parked the car. I start walking towards the bank. Let's say I'm at 40 feet away from the bank. I'm going. All of a sudden, I saw that right parked, the car in front of the bank is the Rebbetzon's car. The Rebbetzon had a brown Cadillac. The license plate was MS-173. That was the Rebbetzon's car. I give a look, I see the Rebbetzon's car. And mitamal, I see the Rebbetzon is sitting right in there in the passenger seat. And she's looking at us. Now, ignore her. I didn't want to. Nichain. I meant to say hello, do something. On the other hand, who am I to say hello to the Rebbetzon? Like, was tut man? I told Yankee that he should wave to the Rebbetzon. He waved to her, and she waved back with a big smile as if. And I went to the bank again. I didn't say a word to anybody, nothing. I guess Chesed Halberstam must have driven to the guy, and he went to the bank to do. I didn't see him in the bank. Could be he was downstairs in one of the offices. I didn't say anything to anybody, garnished. About 3 or 4 days later, my father-in-law, Rabbi Klein, he tells me, did you see the Rebbe a few days ago in front of the bank? How she knew, I don't know, maybe Chesed. So, but that was my last interaction with the Rebbetzon. Then, of course, my wife, Dolzan Gesund, the Maskirim had a minhag that anybody got married, so they used to go to the Rebbetzon to get a bracha. When we got married, for those few months before, my shver tried to make an appointment with the Rebbetzon, but the Rebbetzon then broke her foot. And it took time, and my shver, of course, would not even dare thinking of going to the Rebbetzon when she's not feeling well. And the Rebbetzon kept on saying, when kommt the Kala, when kommt the Chosn, she wanted to see the. So finally, the week before the wedding, it was already in middle of the week, they went to the Rebbetzon.
So they went without you.
Right, so I didn't go. And the Rebbetzon gave my wife an envelope, a present, and weiter. So that was that. What I remember is that in Tafshil Lamed Tes, when it was Nasa Chamishim, 50 years of the Rebbe's wedding, the Sheikh Chabad of Italy, that was also something that I was a little bit involved, they bought for the Rebbetzon a purse. Now, the purse that they bought was from a company called Serapian. Serapian is one of today, weiß was tut. Aber jene Zeiten, Serapian was the name of pocketbooks. So I remember that they sent a pocketbook for the Rebbetzon. And I remember that I was, my father was telling me, the Rebbetzon has to get the number one in the world, so that was that. And I remember also one time I went, must have been Lamed Gimel or Lamed Daled. My father was here in New York, and I remember we went to the phone in front of Kingston and Eastern Parkway. There used to be telephones. First there was a booth, then there was telephones. Then they moved them right by the train station. So I remember how my father called up the Rebbetzon, and it was a short conversation, but I asked my father, what did the Rebbe? That's how I knew the number to the Rebbe's house, by the way. Those days was unlisted. Kain Neves, there's the number. Everybody in my class knew that I know the number. And my father told me that the Rebbetzon said, it was already at least a year or two that they didn't speak. And the Rebbetzon said, Aza of der Gast. Seemingly the Rebbe always used to tell her, when my father comes, because those days was a big thing. My father used to come very often. Shluchim didn't do that those days. So
But your father went to the Rebbetzin?
No.
No.
Well, he did go to the Rebbetzin once or twice earlier. Stamazeh is like the older people used to go visit? No. One story was before my times. In other words, in the late Chof's, early Lameds. I'm not sure exactly when that was. Milan is at least it used to be the center of fashion of the world. Milan it's known. So, and the center of Milan there's a big cloister, whatever. In front of it, there's a massive square called Piazza Duomo. Piazza Duomo has also a lot of stores. Then there's a gallery, Galleria Vittorio Emanuele, the king, whatever. And that goes from this square to the next square, where you have one of the biggest theaters in the world, Palazzo della Scala. So there were two basic stores that I'm going to talk to you about. One of them was, my father was once going, and he saw in the window that they were selling 3 yards of scheide that I think King Charles, and now it's King Charles, then it was Prince Charles. He came to Milan to make a coat, and they made it of special cashmere, thin and does, and they had 3 yards left of it. And whoever wants to buy it could buy it. Versteht sich, it didn't cost $5. My father saw it. He decided such a thing for a king passed for our king. The Rebbe has to get a new coat. The Rebbe, I don't know if you remember. The Rebbe has to have a regular coat. The Rebbe should have a coat that's passed for a king. My father got one of the Balabatim to pay for it. My father brought it to New York. And
Cashmere coat.
What?
Cashmere coat.
No, not coat. The scheide.
Oh,
And then you would give it to Hans, and Hans will make the coat out of it. But you have to ask the Rebbe first. You can't just... my father didn't want to go by himself to Rebbetzin, so he took along Reb Handel Lieberman. Handel Lieberman was a famous painter. He was very, very close to the Rebbetzin. So he went with Reb Handel. That's what my father told me. He went with Reb Handel, and he presented to the Rebbetzin the scheide, and he said that l'cheire is passed for the Rebbe to have a coat like a king. Here's the scheide. I'm not sure what the Rebbe said. My father told me the Rebbe said, it's not going to work. The Rebbe is not going to go for it. And thus. So that was the story with the cashmere. Derech Hakav, my father told me that he heard from Rebbe Handel when he went, they were talking. And Rebbe Handel told him, there was one year, Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe came to 770. Usually the Rebbe used to come at least a half hour, 45 minutes before davening, enough time. One time the Rebbe came mamish late, like not late for davening, but much later. It was very strange, like 9:45, 10 to 10, mamish. And the Chassidim wanted to know what happened all of a sudden, like why. So they got the Rebbe Handel to ask the Rebbetzin. My father told me like this, so Rebbe Handel said that he asked the Rebbetzin, was there anything special this Rosh Hashanah? And she said, it came Rosh Hashanah by night after the meal. The Rebbe Weiss had a stender or something in his house, or something like that. And the Rebbe hat sich angespart, Rosh Hashanah by night. I think that she said it was standing. Standing was angespart. And the Rebbe stood like this till the morning. The Rebbe saw it's already 9 o'clock, 9:15, and the Rebbe is still standing like that. Now, she wouldn't dare to do anything. On the other hand, so I'm not sure exactly what she did to get somehow the Rebbe's attention. And the Rebbe sort of turned around and she said, shlichus'n tog. shlichus'n tog. And the Rebbe said, Tog? That was the end of the conversation. And then the Rebbe right away prepared to go to shul and whatever. This is something that Reb Handel Lieberman told my father. So that was another story with the Rebbetzin. And then, of course, there's another whole parsha, which I'm not going to go into the details, the Rebbe's hat. We had the shlichus'n to give to the Rebbe the hat. Of course, later there was some from Bancroft, maybe. I have it in my hand, in my father's archive, a letter, Tavshich Chav Ches, from Reb Zalman Gerari to my father, how he got from the Rebbetzin exact instructions of the hat, Borsalino, and I used to go and order it in that Galleria. Borsalino had a filiale, what is it called in English? The factory is in Alessandria, but this was like sort of their office in...
It says it in the hats, I think.
What?
It says it in the hats.
Alessandria.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alessandria is a city about an hour and a half away from Milan, near Torino. And this was but if somebody in Milan wanted to deal with, first of all, if you want to buy a hat, you go in there. But we wanted to order the hat, so we had the exact sizes. I even have a piece of a measuring tape, how big the brim should be. Keser HaMelech darf sein tipped up.
So you eventually went over to locally.
Basic nicht. All I know is that I remember I brought once or twice. One time I brought, and my shver showed me that the last one that I brought is still here in Maskiris on the filing cabinet. The Rebbetzin said to wait. I still use the Rebbe to change from one thing to another. It didn't go so simple, And
Are you talking about like in the Lameds?
Lamets. The letter is from Chavches.
Yeah, in the Mems, the Rebbe didn't change his hat too often.
Right. But the Rebbe had.
But the later,
because
we brought the later years.
Yeah, later was vice versa. Because the Rebbe one time went like this. Yeah,
I think the Rebbe did it like once a year. I'm saying Nun and Aleph like that.
Yeah, we didn't bring it in the Nuns. No, but I had from those years. I have all the. I partially did it myself. I went.
But you see on the video that Bancroft was the one that brought it.
That was by dollars later by the brachas. Yeah, you see that. Yes, but I have the letter with all the. I remember bringing it. But at those days, the Italian hats, the Borsalinos, you were able to fold them. They used to come in a triangle box. You fold them and then you... Yeah, so that's as far as the Rebbetzin is concerned.
Okay. So after your marriage, you were here. You were in the Kailo?
Yeah, when I got married, I wanted to... Okay, there's another whole parsha in between, which is a yeshiva in Italy. After I finished shlichus'n in New Haven for 2 years, due to Tafshin Mem Aleph, I went to Italy for 3 years. Tafshin Mem Beis, Mem Gimel, Mem Dalet. I opened up a yeshiva, a small yeshiva, for 10 boys. Be'ikir, it was my younger brother's class, because we felt that they're not ready yet to go to America. They were, 13 years old, 13, 14, whatever. So I went there for 3 years, and as a matter of fact, that Rebbe Lazar, for example, he was learning in Morristown at that time. So he came back to Italy for a year, maybe even 2. I don't remember, also to join. We had a very, very nice group. Rebbe Alex Namdar, who's trained in Sweden, very, very nice group of 10 boys. My brother-in-law, Rab Chazan, was the Menal, of course. But I was the one that sort of put it together in the beginning, and I went there for 3 years to run it, Lefierech. And it was very, very nice. There was one very cute story. Tafshin Mem Beis was Shnas HaShmoinim of the Rebbe. We're Bochrim. And we decided that, the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when did he take out the Mitzrayim? How old was he when he took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim? Shmoinim Shonas. They steht klar in Pasuk. So that's it. Yid Aleph Nisim Mem Beis. This is it. I was there Shnas HaShivim in 770, of course. And now it comes Shnas HaShmoinim. And here I have the yeshiva, and I remember I was sitting in my father's office. The yeshiva was in the shul. In the back, there were 2 rooms. And my father's office was in the shul. I'm sitting with my father, Rosh Chodesh Nisan approximately. And I said, we got to do something. Shnas HaShmoinim. We have to do something. But really not a plot. I had a few ideas. My father nixed them. I'm not going to discuss what they were. And as we're discussing it, there's a knock on the door. One of the nice Balabatim, very good friend of ours, not from my father's community, from the Lebanese community, but also very close. Milan is like one big happy family, He came. He has a problem. His father passed away a few weeks before, a week or 2 before, which we were there, but Levaya and everything. And there's a problem. What's the problem? The father, after the Second World War, he bought a massive piece of land in Japan, in Kobe. At that time, there was nothing in Japan yet. The Shluchim went in Memhei, Memvav. This is Tafshin Mem Beis. If the Rebbe wanted to print a Tanya in Japan, so there were a few Lubavitch businessmen, like Rebbe Hishel Chitrik, Rebbe Mendel Shem Tov, that they used to go sometimes, Efri Steinmetz, whatever, but there was nothing there stationed. And his problem is as follows. Because the father has this big shetach there, now, the 30, 40 years, whatever it was, 30 years later, the thing is worth who knows how many times more. So the family has an office over there in Kobe to run this operation. Now, since in Kobe there's no Yiddishkeit those days, there's a little shul, only Shabbat, mamish nothing. So there's like a few brothers and a few brothers-in-law. They would rotate. Every year, someone else moves out there. They have a big house, and someone moves out there for the year. Doesn't have to be the Rosh Hashanah, doesn't have to be a Yom Tov, but, he's in charge. What's the problem? He says the father on his deathbed, he said that he wants that whoever is going to be in Japan that year, he should also say Kaddish. So he asked, he came and asked me, what do we do? There's no minyan there, there's no, what do I do about Kaddish? I was a bocher, full of energy. I said, I have an eitzah. What's the eitzah? We have a yeshiva here, 10 boys, right? We're going to ship them out to Japan. We'll open up a yeshiva in Japan. Well, I might have given if they're sitting in Milan or sitting in Japan, right? And the last time there was anything of Lubavitch in Japan was in 1946, right after the war. We're going to, when you bring a yeshiva to a place, the whole place turns over, right? The Kovach Nas Hashmeinim, we're going to open up the Far East. And he said, oh, beautiful. He has a big house. There's enough room for 10 people. There's a swimming pool. No problem with a mikveh. And you didn't have to be there Yom Tov. This was before Pesach. He says, you're going to New York for Yudalef Nissen, Bepashtus, right? Because everybody knows over there. And order a container of food. It'll take 2 weeks to get to Japan. By the time the guys will get there in ER, the food is there, house is there. And then he took out 5,000 yen, the Japanese money, and he says, I want you to, instead of going to New York, now for Yudalef Nissen, go Milan, Kobe, New York. So you'll go see what's happening, prepare it, to dust and yens, and my father is sitting there, and he said, excellent, I didn't even speak to the Bachman, didn't tell anybody anything. And I figured, okay, here, Lekovich Nas Hashmeinim, we're going now to Platz the whole Middle East. Opstamp Yeshiva, und gehen. Aber, those days there was no such thing as doing things on your own, you had to ask the Rebbe. Today, but those days, can't do it on your own. So, da fragen dem Rebbe. Okay. I picked that. So he was very happy. I told him, I'll we'll be in touch and we'll see what happens. The whole thing took not even 15 minutes. Okay? Here in 15 minutes, I have the yeshiva in Japan. Okay? So I pick up the phone, call up Maskiris, I speak to Rabbi Groner, and I tell him the whole story. He was ecstatic. He says, wow. And he also knows another thing. When the Gareliks write a plan to the Rebbe, they don't write a plan about something, then do it, and then come crying to the Rebbe 2 weeks later, we don't have enough money. We don't. No, not with the Gareliks. When we do something, there was, I don't know if you saw, there was something running around lately. The Berel Baumgarten was once by the Rebbe. And he was complaining he has problems with his Balabatim from over there where he was. And he doesn't know what to do. So the Rebbe told him. He was in Italy for a little while, in the first year that my parents were there. So he told him my father's name, and he says, Rechet lektisch kan honig für seine Balabatim. Aber me hört von ihm nicht kein Pips. You don't hear a word. My father wouldn't do that. He did. So you know
the Rebbe said that.
That's what the Berel Baumgarten Zeinkel wrote. That he heard from his mother, that his mother heard from her father, that the Rebbe said, lektisch kan honig für seine Balabatim. Oh, me hört nicht von ihm kein Pips. That's what he said. Okay, so here, Label knew that it's a done deal, So he says, give me about an hour or so, and I'll get back to you. Say that he wrote down the whole thing. He finishes, it goes by about, I don't know how long it was. The phone rings, it's Label. Rabbi Groner. He says, Levi, are you sitting? I said, yeah. Write down. This is what the Rebbe answered. I remember the Lashon. The Rebbe wrote like this. Mi yikach al atzmoi. Achrayus shel kamo vekamo tzeirim be'ir kanal. Who is going to take that achrayus? A bunch of youngsters. Such a place. There were no Chabad houses there. There was no nothing yet. If there's Chabad house, if there's a Yiddish, excuse me, with, I think he said it was 3 question marks or something. So I told Rabbi Groner, I have an eitzah. He says, what's the eitzah? My father's sitting there and listening to the conversation. He looks at me, and he says, Farmach dem Telefon. I listened to my father, So I said, Rabbi Groner, sorry, I'll get back to you. The eitzah that I had was very simple. Here, my brother-in-law and my sister he was sort of in charge of the yeshiva, right, the Menayel. So I figured I'll offer to them to come to Japan also. You have a younger man. He's going to take achrayas. He's going to, with his wife.
They had children then?
Yeah.
Whatever. You're offering them to go to Japan, no problem.
No, the conversation has a shmeinim. You have to do something.
100%.
This was all in the spur of the moment. I was a bacher, don't forget. A bacher tracht anders wie younger man. Right? Anyways, my father told me to close the phone. So I closed the phone. My father says, I want to tell you a story. Okay? The story he heard from Reb Zalman Shimon Dvorkin. And Reb Zalman Shimon erzählt that one time when he was a bacher in Russia, they went to the Musar Haskell from the story is gewaltig. To make a long story short, they went to in Russia in the schwere Zeiten when the Friedrich Rebbe was in Leningrad. They went for sukkahs to the Friedrich Rebbe to Leningrad. A whole bunch of bakrim. It was Mamers Sakanis Nefashis, but Lepel they went. When they came to Leningrad, they also found out that Dragachover is in Leningrad. Dragachover was Dragachover.
He lived in Leningrad, no?
No, he was for a few years in exile.
Okay.
Then later he went back.
At that time, he lived in Leningrad.
Yeah, there was a time that Friedrich Rebbe and the Ragachover were together in Leningrad. So the Bachrim also wanted to go see the Ragachover. The Chalaman, that's an opportunity. Ragachover. He was a chassid, overreichend for the mashpia of the yeshiva was the Berel Kurnitzer, Garfinkel. In Rebbe he got killed by the Nazis. Berel was a exception of a person. A lamden, a chassid, everything. And he didn't like so much this fact that they want to go to the Ragachover. So he told the Bachrim, you know what? You want to go to the Ragachover? No problem. I'll go with you. And you know what? I'm going to ask him a question and he's not going to know the answer. The Ragachover. There was no such thing for somebody asking him, okay, and the Ragachover doesn't know the answer. The Rebbe writes in Likutei Sichos, that there's a place where the Ragachover asks a question. Over there, Pashas Yitzavim Vayelech about Kohen Ibn Levi. And the Ragachover remains about Tzorich Iyon. He has a question, why is it second? Whatever. Tzorich Iyon. And the Rebbe says in the Sikha that this is one of the Gitzel Te'erter, where the Ragachover remains with a Tzorich Iyon. And the Rebbe answers the Tzorich Iyon of the Ragachover by learning Rashi and Chumash. You learn Rashi, Pshutishal Mikro, get up the Kasha for the Ragachover. You understand what's Tutzach? The Rebbe answers a question of the Ragachover by learning Pirush Rashi al Taira. Okay? Anyways, so but the Rebbe also says that you hardly find him with a tzarichin, reminding with a question. So now the Bachrim Taka wanted to go to the Ragachover. Because now it's more interesting. They went to the Ragachover. The Ragachover saw them. Normally, when people used to come, he used to talk to them for a few minutes and make zero out of them and gegangen weiter. The Ragachover had no time to waste. But here, Tmimim. Bachrim, Tmimim. He took them in very warm. The famous story that he asked them is that he come in Leningrad zum Rebbe in Leningrad. Yeah, the famous story.
Okay. He said there's 100 Nafkaminas?
No, he said there are 7.
7 Nafkaminas?
7, and then he told them one. Then they asked him the other ones, and he said, geht zuch.
He said they get cup and van.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, there's a few versions.
I heard it from Beryl Mochkin.
Yeah, it's printed in Migdalois. Anyways, so Beryl Kurnitz, so then he told him, is that you come in Herren oder Fragen? So Beryl said that we come in Fragen. Okay, what's the question? So Beryl said to the Ragachover, when you look in Chumash, steht Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker. By Yidden, fängt sich on for the Nacht, the Tag. By the Goyim, doesn't work that way, Lahavdil. By the Goyim, it's different. They have the day, and then as they fängt sich on the Teire, Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, im Rishon, Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, im Sheni. Teire Shebalpeh, wie fängt sich on? Memes Aker in the Shema, Be'arvis. The next mission is B'Shachris. Weil alles geht the Nacht and the Tag, the night and the day. Fragt der Akashe, when you look at Shulchan Aruch, what's the first Simmons Aleph? Hilchis, Hashkamas HaBoker. Waking up in the morning. Fragt er zum Ragachover. Everything in Torah goes night and day. Why all of a sudden Shulchan Aruch starts with Hashkamas HaBoker? That was the question. The Ragachover, he was a Nazir, he had long hair, short, skinny, wild, weißt du was? He had a stender. On the stender he had a Rambam, you know that. The Rambam was his Rebbe. When he had to go to the men's room, he would say to the Rambam, Rebbe, ich komm bald zurück. Coming back soon. Yeah. Anyways, So the Rogatchover heard such a question. He started going back and forth in the room. He doesn't have an answer. Okay. I don't know what happened after that, and I'm going to tell you the answer in a minute. But I don't know if they told him the answer, didn't, but that's it, they left. When they left, the Bochrim asked Berel Kurnitzer, did you have a good question that we knew? But how did you know that he's not going to know the answer? Fandest du gewusst? So he said, I'll tell you why. He once went to the Rebbe Rashab to a Sifa Sarabonim, I think it was, or something, to a big... And the Rebbe Rashab said what we call a Sicha, a speech in front of all the people. In middle of that Sicha, the Rebbe Rashab asked the following question. Was lochere darf man verstehen, die ganze Teire geht doch, weil ihr Beiker. Sag ihm, schon noch steht, dass kann man sagen, Beiker. There's two versions to this, by the way, I'll tell you in a minute, but this is the version that my father told me. And the Rebbe Rashab answered. Said Berel Kurnitzer to the Bochrim, a Scheile, was der Rebbe fragt, wird nicht wissen the Teretz. When the Rebbe asks a question, you're not going to know the answer. Because the Rebbe doesn't need you.
He was there.
What?
The Rogatchover was there, you said.
The Rogatchover?
The Rogatchover was at this.
No, he wasn't there.
Oh, this...
Berel Kurnitzer was by Asifa Sarabon.
He was there, okay.
The Rebbe Rashab asked a question, he answered.
So, Shaila was the Rebbe fragt.
And you should know, you could do that with Likutei Sichos. The Rebbe asks a whole bunch of questions before the beer. Go and ask anybody in Vestish Gefinnik and Teretz. You won't find that. I tried it many times. Any Teretz you'll find, there's still a kasha. Mit amol, the Rebbe get a Teretz, it's lat verstandig. Okay? This is what Berel Kurnitzer told, and this is what Reb Zalman Shimon told my father. So my father told me, as the Rebbe ot Shaile, wirst du nicht wissen der Teretz. The Rebbe is not asking you to find an Eitzah. No. The Rebbe has a question, geendigt. You stop right there. Don't try to be smarter. And that's why you will see that when somebody would tell the Rebbe something, and the Rebbe would go, and the person would repeat himself, that was the biggest mistake in his life. Don't repeat yourself.
That the Rebbe's is not because he didn't hear it.
What does it?
He didn't like what was said.
Exactly. You have to rephrase your question or do something. Don't. And
by the way, you can see this tested in there's a few. I'm not going to say what it's about because I don't want to.
Sure.
But there's more than one video where different people say the same thing, and the Rebbe goes, and it's the same exact topic. Like
I tell you, this is a topic that we could go on this for who knows how long, because I checked it out.
Yeah. Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim, as a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well through visiting our website, derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
My father had this thing. When the Rebbe asked him a question, he never answered. Never. Because der Rebbe fragt, du wirst nicht wissen der Teretz. Forget it. But it takes guts not to answer the Rebbe. But the Rebbe knows his customers, and I remember I was in Yechidus once with my father, twice. And the Rebbe asks about somebody which came into Yechidus. The Rebbe wanted to know what the outcome was. I brought the guy gerade because I met him here in New York to bring him. My father didn't answer. The Rebbe went to the next question. The Rebbe went like just questions.
It's on video.
No, this was in Yechidus.
No, by dollars.
Oh,
there's a video that Rebbe asking your father questions.
About the gear.
Yeah. And your father, he looks with the
right.
smile.
So this was when I was a bocher in yeshiva, and I remember how, on the one hand, here I'm going to build Japan. The Rebbe hat Takashe geendigt. There's nothing to discuss. But I need a father like my father to get to do that. It was so powerful to me. Because if you don't think about it like that, it's all the time. The Rebbe asks something, a person answers. It's so that was in Tafshin Mem Beis. Tafshin Mem Daled, I went with my father to a Asifas Harabonim. Very, very, unfortunately, I can't discuss too much about that. But there was a big Asifas Harabonim for 3 days. I was a bocher. And I knew that the Rebbe likes to get information. The Rebbe wants duchim, and they don't rely on the fact that the ruchdi is also begashmis. What I did was, there were about 60 rabbonim from Europe at that, maybe 50, 60 rabbonim. It was a 3-day, and Lord Jacobowitz was then from England, then the chief Rabbi of Yerushalayim, Arav Kulitz. His son was a bocher, so he came along with him. He was the guest of honor, guest speaker. I interviewed each Rav as a bocher. And I sent in a duch to the Rebbe, a detailed duch. I wouldn't show it to anybody today because I wrote like a bocher, and I wrote exactly what I think of each one also. Today you have to be much more careful. And I got very good reports. I'm not going to say how, what, and when about this report that when I sent it to the Rebbe. So that was also when I was a bocher, Tafshim Mem Dalet, yeah. Then Tafshim Mem Hey, I became a chassan, and the rest is history. I don't know if you want to talk now about Koilel.
Right, why not? Okay,
I'll do it bekitzer. I was in Koilel. Now, when I got married, my Schwer soll sein gesund, I wanted to go on shlichus'n right after the wedding. Ich habe nicht was zu tun. My Schwer, he felt that I should be in Koilel for a year. He says, you want to be in Matzilach Shlichus, you have to go to Koilel for a year, which he was right. And then he said, and it's also good for my wife, to be the first year next to her mother. He said, Nachdem kannst du gehen, wo du willst. You go wherever you want. And I figured he has a lot of experience. If he says it, I may as well go for it. And, and I stayed for a year in Koilel. 2 weeks after my chasana, this was in Adar, Tafshim Mem Hey. My chasana was Gimel Adar. And 2 weeks after the chasana, by the way, just an interesting point, when the Maskirim made weddings, I'm talking about till Memches. When the Maskirim made weddings, the Rebbe used to make sure to go home before the chuppah, not to interfere into the weddings. That one might even go home. So I told my Shver to tell the Rebbe a later time of the chuppah. So this way we'll have the chuppah and the Rebbe will still be in 770. Lapel, we came flying in front of 770, and as we came, the Rebbe went out to go home. So, the Rebbe Zalman Shimon Dvorkin, who was the Rav in Crown Heights, passed away right after Purim, that Memhei. About 2 weeks. So for about a year plus, there was no Rav in Crown, official Rav in Crown Heights. I don't remember if it was Shvat time or something like that. Rabbi Heller, who was the head of the Koilel, called over two younger light. One of them is Rabbi Nissen David Dubov, who's today in Wimbledon, England, and myself. And he said that Rabbi Chadakov called him in, that he would like to take two younger light, should go to Montreal to take Shimush. by Rabbi Hendel for Rabbonis. I was not interested in going into Rabbonis. Absolutely. My father was a Rav, and I know exactly what a Rav goes through, and I said, I'm not going for this. But I'm not going to say no to Rabbi Chodakov or to Rabbi Heller. So when he said that, so I told Rabbi Heller like this, look, if it comes from the Rebbe, there's no question. But if it doesn't come from the Rebbe, again, there's no question. You know what I mean? If I know that the Rebbe wants it, I'll do anything. But if it's not, okay. Goes by another month, and he calls us again, tells us the same story. So I said, my same answer as last time. So he says, no, I need an answer. So he says, do me a favor, at least write into the Rebbe that Dan Holler is giving you such a and then you'll know. But nicht. I think they got me to write into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered, Kifurse, Katzas an Holler. That's the Rebbe answered. Okay. We didn't hear anything. Meanwhile, happened the Bchiris, the elections for the Rabbanim, and Rabbi Marlow, and then Sulangiyor and Rabbi Azdab and Rabbi Heller were elected to the Beis Din. This was in the summer of Tavshim Mem Vav. Sivan. I don't know if it was the day after that or 2 days after that, but Mamish right Bismichis, Rabbi Heller called us over, and he said that Rabbi Chodakov said like this, that what we discussed about going to Montreal is bottle, and we should, didn't ask, we should do it here with the Beis Din, and we should do it like this. We should keep this man of Koilel, the schedule of Koilel. Now the schedule of Koilel is 8 o'clock starts Chassidus. From 9 to 11 you have davening and breakfast. So he said that he wants us to daven before Chassidus, and from 9 to 11 we will sit in the Beis Din together with Rabbi Heller and get to hear the Shailas then. And we should start, this was the Haktorah was Chav Chasiven, we should start Tezvav Tammuz. Why? Veisach nicht. That's what he said, Tezvav Tammuz. As far as, since we were reading Kollel over a year, and we have to get paid a little more, so he's going to give us 2.5 paychecks. Those days the paycheck was a certain amount, which was not
a lot of money.
A lot of, right? But whatever it was. And we're going to get 2.5 times. Let's say it's $100, so we're going to get 250. And I remember the whole time I was trying to ask my shver, my father, Rabbi Klein, do you think that it comes from the Rebbe or not? But he had no clue, and this was something Rabbi Chodakov, Then, that day, I went to the house, and I told him, by the way, he told us to stay here for another year, and he's going to give, a paycheck 2.5 times. He says, 2.5 times? For sure it's from the Rebbe. He says, Rabbi Chodakov wouldn't give 2.5 paychecks. No. He said, for sure, no question. I must say, it was one of the best times in my life, that year or two. And I'm not going to go now through the whole thing, but he told us that we have to make sure. By the way, I didn't have full smicha yet when I got married. So that was one of the ways why I stayed, because the Rebbe says you have to have smicha before you get married. And I had almost finished, but not, so I figured I'll finish it. And he said we should also take Yodin together with the Shimush. So my Chavrus and myself, we learned Yodin. We got verheard by Rabbi Pekarsky privately. And we got Yodin. And then the way it used to work is, he had a telephone. Those days there was no caller ID or anything. He used to press the speaker when the phone rings, and he would have a conversation with the person who was asking the question. Most of the time, nobody knew who it is, not the man or the woman, whoever's calling. If it was somebody who wanted to ask something private, and we knew who it is, so he would pick up the phone. But that was 2% of the time, because most questions that people asked wasn't something private. It was, and it was really, really exceptional. Shimush there's nothing like it, especially like this, and you sit with the Rav. And about a year later, Nissen David Dubov got a hatzah to go to Wimbledon. He left, and then I continued myself. So I used to sit there with Rabbi Heller those 2 hours, and then at night I used to go to Rabbi Marlow. Rabbi Marlow used to be there till 3 o'clock in the morning. So we used to come, we used to discuss a lot of things. One of the things that happened in that year was regarding Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei The Rebbe then started talking about Sheva Mitzvahs, the Mems. So this was Tafshem Mem Zayin already. One day Rabbi Heller calls us that Rabbi Nissen Mindel, the Rebbe's maskir, told him he should take two Yungelite. I don't know if he said us, but I figured there's two Yungelite who are under Maskir's payroll, right? And we should gather everything that there is. I'm telling you the story just bekitzer. Should gather everything which there is in sefarim about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei. So, and he said like this: just gather, and we should also visit the Fifth Avenue Library in Manhattan. We should visit Yeshiva University Library. And then the lashon was, und das darf nehmen nicht mehr wie 2 oder 3 Tage.
The whole thing.
The whole thing should take no more than 2 or 3 days. We had no idea where to start Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei. There's the Rambam, a couple of halachas, whatever. And this was Monday afternoon. That means we have to be done by Thursday afternoon. So Rabbi Heller told us that he knows that in the library there's a sefer, a chumash. There was a big guy in Williamsburg. His name was Rabbi Steif. My mother, when she was a girl in Beis Yaakov in Williamsburg, remembered Rabbi Steif. Okay, they talk about in the Yuds. He was a short guy. He went through the concentration camps. He went through Meirudi Kegon, this sefarim, beautiful sefarim of his. So he had a chumash on Pashas Bereishis and Noach, and on the bottom there's a lot of hours about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei. So he said you could start with that, and then noch sein weiter. Then I habe that in Encyclopedia Talmudis there's a erech B'nei. So what we did was like this. Right away that afternoon, we went to my house and we started writing down everything from Encyclopedia Talmudis, whatever we could. The next day we went to the Fifth Avenue Library. We spent there 7 or 8 hours. Couldn't find kimat garnished. But there was one thing, there was a file over there. I'm talking about an archive of an Alterov that the family, my sisters, they didn't know order. So they gave the whole thing to the library. So we went through it, and we thought maybe he wrote something, because it was very interesting. I don't even remember his name. And one of the things that we came across in that, but now, you have to understand like this. The librarian brings out that file, and he sits there and watches you. He gives you paper by paper. So if I could go myself, can again, but paper by paper. We whatever. And we went through the whole thing. He had over there was a paper that I recognized that this was the Ksaviat Kodesh of the Mittel Rebbe. Okay? So I asked him if I could just have a photostat, and I brought it to Bet 11 in the library, whatever. We found something in German, something about Sheva Mitzvahs, but why did we have to go to the Rebbe said, so we did it. We went the next day to the Fifth Avenue, to Yeshiva University Library. So then I found another thing from this Rabbi Steif. And I saw in the beginning it says Steif Muncie. So I thought that the guy in Muncie is the Mechaber. Turns out, so I right away called up from Yeshiva University. I called him up, and it turned out that it was his Einikol. He was a Rosh HaKollel in Muncie, and Rabbi Yonason is his Zayda. In other words, he still has a father in Williamsburg, and his father is the son of Rabbi Steif. So I asked him, because it says over there that in his Sefer he was Meirich. I asked him, you know anything about the Sefer? So he says, you have to call my father. He doesn't know of any Sefer, but call my father. My father will know everything. Okay. So I called the father, and he's in Williamsburg. But the we had to, so we gave in everything, the way it is. But we prepared a very nice thing, and we gave it to Rabbi Mendel on Thursday afternoon. He didn't expect us. He was to, got a job, and then whenever it'll be. And here we came. We were up, literally, came out the whole night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. We worked nonstop till Thursday afternoon. Whatever, and we put together a very nice package, whatever possible. And we made it mesuder, but according to each mitzvah v'chulu. Then there was another thing which I did. Today,
you don't know what happened with it.
Wait. There's Eitzer HaChochma today. You could do these things you could do in minutes. Those days, the only thing that was available those days was there was something called Dafka. Dafka was a program in Chicago. They were in touch with Israel, with Eretz Yisrael, with Bar Ilan University. There were a few people that had like Bar Ilan and somebody that they had a lot of indexed Shilas Teshuvos, and you could get a printout for $100, $200, whatever. So I paid them then I don't know if it was $200 or $300, all on the phone. They should do it, that to send it. They UPS'd to the next day. So this we were able to give to the Rebbe, side the package and side the printout from the, God, it cost me whatever, but Baruch Hashem, we gave our it was very nice. But I knew that there's more. Fartik. And we gave it to Rabbi Mindel. Now, a couple of days later, I went to the Steif, and I came to the house, and he showed me there's a closet which is closed. There's all the ksavim for Rabbi Steif. Already 25 years, nobody opened up this closet. So I said, can I open it? Anyways, he let me. Mitamal, I find. Those days, when you made a sefer, you got gelis, the proofs. So he had already proofs for a sefer with the first 3 mitzvahs. And then there was a stack of papers like this for the next 4 mitzvahs. So I said, that's what I'm looking for. A sefer like this. So I told him, can I make a photostat? He says, no, you're going to take it, you're going to print it, you're going to do it. I said, I'm not doing anything. I don't need this stuff. The Rebbe needs it, and the Rebbe is never going to print something without your permission. And he was hesitant. I took $100 or $200. I said, do me a favor. Here, you make the photostats, and you bring it to the Rebbe. You could trust the Rebbe. When he saw that I did that, he says, I trust you. I took it. I went upstairs to 788. They had a photostat. Those days, a photostat machine. I photostated the whole thing. I brought it to Rabbi Groner. And I told him, Zois Motzasi. When he saw it, he says, I think we're not hitting the jackpot, but we're getting somewhere. About, I don't remember how much later, I got a call from Rabbi Groner. I should come to the office. I came. And he told me that the Rebbe said I should go through the Minchas Chinuch and go through the whole Sefer and find anything that it says about Sheva Mitzvahs B'Nei.
What year is this, by the way?
Mem Zayin.
Okay.
I went home. I sat up because the Rebbe used to come 10 o'clock in the morning. I made up by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. The Rebbe has it. I went through the whole Minchas Chinuch and I made a list of all the places and what he says about Sheva Mitzvahs. And in one place he writes, "Ubekuntresi al Sheva Mitzvahs herachti." That means the Minchas Chinuch wrote a kuntres on Sheva Mitzvahs. So I noted that. I made the whole thing. It was ready 10 o'clock the next morning for the Rebbe. But I noted that the Minchas Chinuch writes that he wrote I didn't hear anything from the Rebbe about that. But I myself went and I called up all the libraries in America, Eretz Yisrael, the family, Babad family, they're in the Minchas Chinuch. Nobody knew anything about such a kuntres. And I told him, look what he writes in this mitzvah. He writes it in 2 places. Kain Neves for garnish. That was that. I didn't hear anything. A couple of years ago, I saw Reb Shalom Ber Shapiro, and he actually says it in one of his night things, that he found this. He asked me once, did you want to work on Sheva Mitzvahs B'Nei? I said, sure did. I gave it to Yeshua. He says, do you know that there's Hoaras from the Rebbe and whatever? But the while I never got to see it. And what?
The Rebbe wrote Hoaras on it.
Something, Epistutzer Dirten, whatever, but, I did my job, and ich mir sag nicht. And but he mentioned it in one of his podcasts, that he has. So he spoke about that.
And you don't know what it was for. You don't know what, but
it was for Nissim Mendel. No, Nissim Mendel in one of the Kfar Chabads, there was an interview with him, and he says that the Rebbe wanted he should make up Kitzur Shulchan Aruch or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. I was asked. I did. I actually at that time, Reb Zalman Garari drove me nuts. Mitam Vad Rabboni Lubavitch. Also, I was to put something about Sheva Mitzvahs. So I gave him whatever he wanted, but I did what I was asked, and I gave. I didn't pursue anything after that.
Okay, very interesting. So maybe we'll finish off. I know there's something with the Prime Minister of Italy.
Yes. The story of the Prime Minister is as follows. First of all, my father with Rabbi Chazan from Rome, the shlich in Rome, they went several times to the government there, but here was a different story. Here what happened was, today I could say the story already. This was in Tafshin Nun Aleph. Hascholas Shnas HaTzadik of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe was turning 89. The story with the sefarim in Russia started. They started in Tafshin Mem Ches, This was already the third year into it. And they got 2 or 3 sefarim through Monday, all this, but the sefarim weren't coming yet. I decided I'm going to bring the sefarim back. Okay? Versteht sich, I can only try. Because I knew that Italy and Russia have very, very good relationship. In Italy, there's a big communist party. They're not communists, they win Russia, but that's what it's called, Communist Party. And in Italy, there was a person, his name was Gianni Agnelli. Gianni Agnelli was the top person in Italy. He was the owner of the car maker Fiat. And Gianni Agnelli was personal friend with Gorbachev and all the big guys in Russia of all the years, starting from Khrushchev, I think even. But mamish, personal friend. Ad kedekach that I heard that Gorbachev, when he used to leave Russia for whatever, he would make a stop in Italy in Gianni Agnelli's house. Personal. Now, he lived in a place called Mirafiori, outside of Torino, where the Fiat is over there. But he was considered the most powerful person in Italy. So I started thinking, let me go to Gianni Agnelli somehow. Let me try to figure it out. And I'll get it unter den Tisch. Gianni Agnelli will ask a personal favor to Gorbachev. Sefarim, go to New York, like they did with the Sefarim from Poland. You don't need the ganze Machadreike, just fertig. So I did some research on this Gianni Agnelli. I went here in Manhattan. In Manhattan, there is a store called Rizzoli, an Italian store, very exclusive store. I once had a program there. If we'll have the time, I'll talk to you about it. Very, very, also very geschmack. And I got a book, the life story of this Gianni Agnelli. Let me see who was his circle, who was his... and I came across a guy by the name of Furio Colombo. Furio Colombo at that time was Mr. Fiat USA. He was the representative here. He was a professor in Columbia University. He was one of the top politicians in Italy. He was a halber editor of the communist newspaper in Italy. And I knew that he's a Oyev Yisrael. Somehow, because I found a book of his, he was in Eretz Yisrael, Punkt by the 6th Day War. He fell in love with Eretz Yisrael. And I found out, Machere Apargud, that seemingly his father maybe even was Jewish. He is for sure a goy. And I figured, let me try to find out about this Furio Colombo. And whatever I read about him, only beautiful things. The pillar went to him, he looked like Ronald Reagan, real polished person, tall, unbelievably handsome, typical Italian, Anyway, so I decided I'm going to do it with Furio Colombo. Let me have a meeting with him, let me talk to him. My father came for the thing of the Gvirim before Yud Aleph Nissen. Then it was at the end of Adar, Tafshin Nun Aleph. So I called up the office of Fiat, and I spoke to the secretary of Furio Colombo, and I said I would like to have a meeting with him. My father is here from Italy. I said he's the chief rabbi of Italy, even though he's just of Milan and not even the chief rabbi. But, Rabbino. And we'd like to have a meeting with him. So the first thing she said, before 3 weeks, there's nothing to discuss. He's booked. You can't, she said in Italian, non riesco a mettere uno spillo. I can't even put a needle. That's how packed it is. So I said, look, my father's here from Italy now. He's leaving tomorrow night. If you could get me something, I would greatly appreciate it. She said, I'll get back to you soon. And I gave her my office number. You know what my office number was? I was teaching then in Dara Teda. So I gave her the payphone of a Dara Teda. That was my office number. Okay. Goes by about an hour or so, an hour and a half. The phone rings. So I ran to get it, versteht sich. And he said, for the rabbi of Milan, he is giving 20 minutes tomorrow morning from 10 to 10:20. I said, great. I went with my father the next morning. I prepared. I had then 1 hour, 40 years, that album, all about Lubavitch and things like that and whatever. He came. First of all, he was so covetic from my father. You can't imagine. You're talking about this guy is a big name. He's not.
Did your father speak Italian?
No. I mean, it's a little bit. He get buttoned. My father didn't say a word. Okay. I spoke the whole time. There was another from Italy. One of the Zippels was here, and I took him along also with me. Not the brother, one of the children. Whatever. And I gave him a 10-minute speech about Lubavitch and about the sefarim, and that's where we would like to go to, Jan Agnelli. He says, first of all, I know the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I've read plenty about him, and as a matter of fact, I would like to have an interview with him because he is a professor also of journalism. So, and he has different newspapers and whatever, so he would like to have... But that's not for now, he says. He says, you're going in the wrong direction. You don't need Gianni Agnelli. You need Giulio Andreotti. Giulio Andreotti was the prime minister of Italy at that time. So I said, fine, but I have no idea how to get to him for something. Sure, but Karane de Igre se you leve parvanke. So I said, I have no idea how the process. He says, no, I'll take care of it. You don't worry, I'll take care of it. Give me a couple of days and we'll talk. But just like that, I'll take care of it. Versteht schon alles und fertig. Okay, the whole meeting took 20 minutes. And then I finished off, I said, by the way, the Rebbe's birthday is in 2 weeks. If we get it for the Rebbe's birthday, the Rebbe's turning 89. You get this for the Rebbe, I think we'll manage to get you an interview. I think so. I can't guarantee you. But say that. This was Thursday morning. My father left Thursday night to Italy. Monday morning, I get a call from Rabbi Butman, Reb Shmuel Butman. Levi, who spoke to Andreotti about the sefarim? This is Monday morning. The meeting was Thursday. Who spoke to Andreotti about the sefarim? So I said, versteht sich? I said, I have no idea. Why? Maybe call my father. Ask him. Maybe he did. Because I didn't speak to Andreotti. My father didn't, right? So I said the truth. I don't know. I didn't want to say I spoke to... And I figured, I don't think anything happened in 2 days. I said, why are you asking? He says, because last night there must have been some kind of a dinner or something. This was right after the Gulf War. During the Gulf War, Italy was on the side of Israel rather than the Arabs, which normally there would be more neute to that side. And because of that, the big Jewish organizations, I think it was Hadassah, Bnei Brit, or some of the big ones, they decided to honor Andreotti for that. So last night there was a dinner or something, and one of the top guys from these organizations was sitting next to Andreotti, and he started explaining to him what they do, what the type of else. Andreotti, typical Italian, he says, I don't know. The only Jewish organization that I know is Lubavitch. And I just spoke yesterday to Gorbachev about giving back the library, nonchalantly. So that's what Mullah wants to know. Who?
Budman was there.
No, no. He says they got a call from the guy. That's what he just called. Yeah. I think he told me he got a call. I don't think he was there. No, I think he told me he got a call from this guy who he knows. So he wants to know, wow, who? So I gesagt, gemacht nicht wissen, ich verstehe es, but at least I saw that this Furio is doing pretty well. If on Thursday, by Sunday night, he already spoke. It's not something to... And I figured, very good, ich schweig. Goes by about 2-3 days, and I get a call from Furio Colombo. And I knew that he did a good job. And he tells me, I don't know what happened over here. He says, I spoke to Andreotti. Andreotti spoke to Gorbachev. Gorbachev said, give me 2-3 days, and we're going to take care of it, and the sefarim are coming to New York. But he said, I didn't want to call you until I actually know that ready, and then you tell me, what has to be done, Pasha Begashmius, to bring it over. And he says, I don't know what happened. He says, I took all the shortcuts. Tutte le scorciatoie. And I knew that he's saying the truth, because and he says, all of a sudden, I came in front of a brick wall, and I cannot figure out what that wall is. There's something not letting it through. Gorbachev promised Andreotti that he's going to let through the sefarim. And I told him, because the Rebbe's birthday is coming, and he says, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to do. For the Rebbe's birthday, the stuff should be in New York already. And he says, he says something in Russia over there, Epis. In other words, he felt that there's somebody not stronger than Gorbachev, but there's somebody else who has the power to veto Gorbachev or something like that. He doesn't know. Anyway, so it didn't go through. Fell through. But I know that he did it, because if I got the call from Mullah Butman about this guy, so obviously, And then I have now some papers where Take Andreotti tells Colombo in a memo, I don't know what happened. He told me he's going to do it. Like something, this is politics. This is not Stam. This is... So he felt very bad. He was very upset. Very upset.
By the way, this is not the first...
What?
There's other shluchim there's other shluchim that also went through people that have connections to Gorbachev.
Right? And they thought... And
they don't go, yeah.
No question.
Yeah, we know the names, I'm saying.
Yeah. It rates, everything is... No, but that's why I figured, let's all try. Even from the other end, if Taki calls me up, okay, Levi, we're ready to go, then I would call all the people involved and say, guys, keep it low, not the... Anyways, okay. So now this Furio Colombo, one other thing that he was in charge of, right attached to the Italian consulate in Manhattan, on Park Avenue, there is what's called Centro Culturale Italiano, the Italian Cultural Institute. And he was the president of it. So he does all kinds of very fancy events, with Italians, with either special painters or all kinds of stuff. And once in a while he may have something Jewish also, but not secular, very, very secular. So he started inviting me to all kinds of functions. And I went. It's a good guy to be close to. Came Hanukkah, right, a couple months later, and he made a book. He made a book, and he launched it in this Rizzoli, this place that I told you, Manhattan, this library. It's going to be on the second floor, Hanukkah. And the guest speaker is going to be Elie Wiesel. And it was a ganze Geschäft, it's all his friends. And he asked me if I could come, since it's Hanukkah, bring a menorah, light the candles, make it, into a nice Hanukkah party, even though it's all going. But still, I came. It was beautiful. Not only that, then there was somebody from Italy that came from the television in Italy. Not a reporter, a balabos. And I brought him to the Rebbe Hanukkah, for the brachas. And from there, we went to Manhattan to this thing. So it was another... And then I lit the menorah. And we sang Mois Tzur, and everybody. It was beautiful, beautiful. And it was in all the newspapers in Italy. And on the TV, the Rai. Okay? This was in Kislev. In beginning of Shvat.
Nun Beis.
Yeah, all Nun Beis. Beginning of, or Tevis. I have the dates exactly. He calls me up. He says, Rabbi Garelik, please come to my office. I have a very nice surprise for you. I came to his office and he says like this, Andreotti, the prime minister, is coming to America on a certain date. Nobody knows about that yet. He's coming for 36 hours. In other words, he's landing in the afternoon. He's going to be here for an evening. Then he's going to be there in the morning. Actually, more than this, like 2 days or something. Then the next evening, he has an event in New York University. And the next day, he's going back to Italy. Why is he coming to New York University? Because they printed a book of his, whatever, and that's why. And he says, what I did was, I blocked 3 hours in the morning from 9 to 12, and we're going to bring him to the Rebbe. Prime Minister of Italy to come to the Rebbe. This is. I said, great. And I figured, very good. First of all, Andreotti is a person who loves, antiques and sefarim and history and this and that. Second of all, he has the cheretz, sof kol sof, for Yiddishkeit, etc. And I figured to myself, what we're going to do is like this. 9 o'clock, I'll be in Manhattan. We're going to drive to Crown Heights from 9 to 10, right? In the car, I will prepare him. From 10 to 10:45, we're going to have a breakfast in the library, next door to 770. The Rebbe, meanwhile, is davening Shachris. As soon as the Rebbe comes up from Shachris, he'll meet him for 5 minutes, just cordial, happy birthday or something.
Like a Yechidus.
Yeah, but just, not to make a whole big thing, because they can't bring him into Yechidus. I told him it was just going to be a cordial, meeting, And I was fartik. And then 11 o'clock, we're back into the car. 12 o'clock, he's back for his business in Manhattan. Okay? I had it all worked out, all perfectly set up.
Maskidis and everything.
Sure. Now, I told about this to Maskidis only the week before. About 10 days before. Because, first of all, I didn't want it to get out. For two reasons. I didn't want that it should get out, because what happens if he, for whatever reason, won't be able to make it? Or what happens if the Rebbe doesn't want? It's Zayna Bushe, whichever way you turn around, is a tegnisht. So therefore I decided not to tell anybody. And also, I'm not going to take a chrais for this whole thing. So I told my father, yes, to write to the Rebbe about it. And then Manavshech. This was set up for Beis Adar Tafshinun Beis. And the Rebbe got the stroke, Chav Zayin Adar Aleph. In other words, the Rebbe got the stroke on Monday, and this was going to be the following Monday. So now, everything was in limbo. The Rebbe had a stroke. I felt he should come anyways to Crown Heights. Let him come. If he wants to see the Rebbe, so he won't see the Rebbe. Let him come to Crown Heights, and he can't go into the Rebbe because the Rebbe had a stroke. That's fine. Everybody else felt it's not proper, it's not a her, not a hin. I couldn't fight the system. So I gave in. So I called up Furi Colombo. I told him, look, the Rebbe got a stroke, and we're going to have to cancel the visit to... So he said, since Andreotti is planning, he has it on his schedule to visit Lubavitch. So what we're going to do is, instead of him coming here, you will come to Manhattan to one of the programs, and that's where you'll meet him. So this way, my father came in because of Chazayin Adar. So he was here.
Chazayin Adar, your father came from Italy?
Yeah, sure.
Just came.
As soon as it happened. I think so. He was here for sure. And that day, we went to New York University. It was a very exclusive affair. There were only two speakers, Giulio Andreotti and Henry Kissinger. These are the two. Anyways, when he finished speaking, so he came off the podium, and then, there was a whole bunch of people waiting to talk to him. And Furio Colombo calls me and my father and myself, and he tells us, come now. We went over to him, and he tells the Prime Minister, these are the people from Lubavitch. Oh, so he calls over one of his chevre. It took about a minute, and he comes back with a box. He had brought a present for the Rebbe to give to the Rebbe. Adayem, I don't know what it is. It's in the library somewhere. I can't figure out. But what I heard then was that it was a alte luch, something, an old Jewish artifact of some sort or whatever, that he brought to give to the Rebbe as a present. But the meeting did not take place for whatever reason.
Today we have heads of state coming to the all day.
Today, this is after Gimel Tammuz. It's a different ballgame. But at that time, don't forget, you were talking about the Rebbetzin before, right? One thing about the Rebbetzin is, besides for being the Rebbetzin, right, which is obviously the number one thing, she was an aristocratic lady. Pashat Begashmis. Today, people don't know what's an aristocrat. It's different, verstehe? Those days, a prime minister was prime minister. Today, and the truth is, you have everything as its milas and chesrenis. There is a shtickle mila to that the whole world is one big chant and fartik. Yeah. But those days, a prime minister from Italy should come to the Rebbe. That was a big, heavy thing, and we almost got it. But that was the story of the prime minister.
Okay. Thank you very much. This has been very...
My pleasure. Again, I think that the bottom line that I do want to come out from all of this, the Rebbe's number one agenda was, and as a matter of fact, there was an old documentary they made on the Rebbe, I think Windows to the Soul or something, and they interviewed me there also, and there's one line that I say about the Rebbe.
Leimid b'shkida hatzuma matzliach.
Excellent. That's the Rebbe's number one agenda. And this I would like to really be to the Bachrim, in Galaita, but be to the Bachrim. You'll have plenty of time. I mean, Mashiach will be here tomorrow. Yes, today. You'll have plenty of time in life when to do all other things. There's one period, you heard once a beautiful line that youth was wasted on youth, right? There's one period before bar mitzvah till the age of like 21, 22, 23. It's almost 10% of your lifetime, 15%, whatever it is. I have all the proofs. I tried my best way to bring out that this is what the Rebbe wants, Limudat Torah. Everything else is an offshoot of that. The Rebbe, all the shlichus comes from the fact that we are doing hafatzas hamayonis. It's true that eventually means also helping Yidden begashmius, but that's not where it starts from. It starts from Torah. That's the number one thing. Nigle, chsidus, poshet, and that's what the Rebbe Moloris Deya Savaye means Torah. Sof kol sof. And we have to get it out there to the world. There's no question about that. But the Bochrim Be'ikr, the youngsters, the younger generation today is amazing. I teach in all the schools. The young generation is super, unbelievably amazing. And it's good that they should also hear what went on at that time, how the Rebbe enjoyed. The Rebbe's enjoyment was when Bochrim are pasha toiling in Torah. No question about it. And of course, do miftzayim, and that's the tchilik, v'niflinu is this. Aber sof kosof, it all is to start from Torah. Bottom line.
Okay, darf ich sich nehmen zum Lernen. I actually just reminded myself I was going to end it here, but there's one thing I want to ask you. I know you have an answer from the Rebbe about naming your children.
Yeah, my son.
Your son. Okay, can you tell us about that?
The story is as follows. What?
He was Mechavrusa.
Who is Mechavrusa?
Your son Beryl.
Oh yes, your Chavrusa?
We learned Chassidus.
Ah.
I don't know how it was Atzuma.
Yeah. The story is as follows. When I was born, I believe I mentioned last time, my parents named me Levi Yitzchak. And Rebbe Tzimchana was obviously very, very appreciative, to say the least. 2 years later, my mother became pregnant. So my mother wrote to the Rebbe Tzimchana that she's pregnant, and maybe she has some more names that she would like to give. So the Rebbe Tzimchana answered back that it is the opinion even of mein Sohn, the Rebbe Shlita. It's the only place where I saw she was right about the Rebbe Shlita. That via nomen geben, how to give a name belongs to the parents. And therefore she is not going to get involved. And maybe my grandmother in Pittsburgh, Mrs. Posner, maybe she has some people in the family that she wants to give. So she's not going to get involved. Ad kedekach, that then the Rebbe, they were born some Gedalia. My mother had twins, my sister Shekevitz and Krinsky. They were born some Gedalia. Mitamol came a telegram from the Rebbe Tzimchana. I only saw telegrams to weddings, not messages. And over it says Mazel Tov and how to give the names. The Hoirim should decide, etc. What I think happened over there was that she sent the letter. She was afraid the letter didn't come on time. And the Rebbe must have told her that he got a telegram. The Rebbe got a telegram that my mother went to the hospital to have baby. Didn't say baby. My father just wrote that my mother went to the hospital. They didn't know yet it was twins. So must have told the Rebbe Tzimchana. The Rebbe Tzimchana must have told the Rebbe that she just wrote a letter about the names. And that's why there's a telegram with the name. That's what I gather, which is not Ruach HaKodesh. It's simple math. And the Rebbe, she says clear about the parents. Okay, that's number one. Now, when we got married, my wife and myself, my name is Levi Yitzchak, my wife is Chana, we were the first couple named after the Rebbe's parents that got married. Pasha Begashmis, my wife was born Tavshich Chav 20 years later, we got married. So we were the first couple. So when we, those days we discussed a little bit different than what we discussed today when they went out. And I told her, that we're the first couple after the Rebbe's parents. It would be proper that we give a name for the Rebbe's brothers. At that time was Yisrael Ari Leib, Dev Ber. And she, of course, had no issue. Then she mentioned the only thing is that when it comes to girls, the first one she has to give is Rachel. Because my Shver's mother, Rabbi Klein's mother, his name is Rachel. And she passed away when he was born. That's why his name is Yerachmiel Binyamin. Because Yerachmiel for Rachel and Binyamin, because it happened the same thing like Binyamin. She passed away 3-4 days after he was born. And I said, excellent. We could give Rachel with pleasure. Punkt then Igros Kodesh came out. And the Rebbe has the famous letter which he thanks that you give the name Rachel.
The Rebbe's Baba.
Right. By the way, I just wanted to mention one more point before I forgot about Rabbi Yonasan Steif. Then when I went then to the house, I found 2 letters from the Rebbe to Rabbi Yonasan Steif for Tavshich Ches about Kibud Avayim by Bnei Noach.
Really?
And I asked that he gave me right. I'd like
hit the jackpot because the Rebbe.
And I brought it to Bet 11. He was then giving out that Igros Kodesh. That's where you'll see that this is one of the only ones that it's Mitzilum Hayigeres. Because I got, and Label Bistritsky told me then that he was the middleman between Yeres Shleif and the Rebbe and Tashiches.
Interesting.
That's what he told me. Label Bistritsky. Whatever. Anyways, getting back to the names. So since we're going to have Beryl and Label, yeah. So at that time, in Tafshin Mem Vav, my son Label was born. We didn't know that Label was younger. That it's the Rebbe, Beryl, Label. Those days, we didn't know anything. Told us Levi Yitzchak came out, there's almost nothing there. And Rabbi Zelikson gave out his Hayom Yom, and he added the Rebbe's family, and he wrote the Rebbe, Label, Beryl. And the Rebbe circled Beryl, and he put him, that Beryl was a Ben Hasheni or something, whatever the Lashon. So
this is later.
Later.
Yeah.
At least we didn't know about that. So the first son we named Yisrael Ari Leib. And I'll tell you something very interesting about that too. I'm going to get to it in a minute. Fine. Now, Beryl was born in Tafshin Nun Aleph. It's a long year.
When?
What?
When?
Shvat, Chof, Gimel Shvat, I think. Chof Aleph, Gimel. Chof Aleph Shvat. Now, Beryl, so the Rebbe Tzachana says the Rebbe doesn't mix into names. I found out something along these lines, I may not be exact, that Yudi Shem Tov, Rabbi Yudi Shem Tov, you could check it with him, he was named after the Rebbe's brother, but the Rebbe's brother is Yisrael Ari Leib. How did he get Yehuda Ari Leib? Because those days they knew his name was Label. So Rabbi Shem Tov wrote to the Rebbe that he's calling his son Yehuda Leib after the Rebbe's brother. And the Rebbe changed it from Yehuda Leib. The Rebbe added Aryeh, but the Rebbe didn't change it to Yisrael. So that's what I heard. So I saw that the Rebbe will not change a name. He'll add, but he won't change.
Because I think Yisrael Leib is named after people that are named Yisrael Leib.
Yisrael Leib, right, yeah. Yeah, his uncle. The Rebbe Tzechana's uncle. Yeah. That's what I heard then, B'Shas Maaseh. And then I heard another thing, because I started looking around. I see there's no Dov Bears around. Yisrael Leib, there are. There were a few, but there are. But Dov Ber, there's not a single one. I had a friend, Grade. I have a friend, one of my good friends.
What do you mean? It's the Mittler Rebbe's name also?
Yeah, but I'm talking about for the Rebbe's brother. Talking about named after the Rebbe's brother. I had a friend who, when he became a chassan, his name was Yisrael. And his shver was also Yisrael. So he had to add a name. So he added Yisrael Dov Ber after the Rebbe's brother. So his name is Yisrael Ber after the Rebbe's. The Dov Ber added when he became a chassan. And the Rebbe gave him a nice bracha. Etc. But I didn't know anybody named the Ber after the Rebbe's brother. So I started searching around and I heard you don't give a name after a bocher that was killed.
Someone young.
What?
Someone young.
Young, killed. That's what I heard. Now, I didn't care. I wanted to give after Rebbe's brother. Gendigt. Aber maybe it's wrong. Was tut man? So I decided I'm going to ask the Rebbe. So we wrote to the Rebbe. The zettel is all over the place, right? That Baruch Hashem, my name is Levi Yitzchak, my wife is Chana, and our first son is Yisrael Ari Leib. And I said, we want to name our second son. I didn't write a name. I said, Achiv Hasheni of the Rebbe. Maybe he had two names. And then we wrote, later we didn't see anybody do it. And I wrote, Veneni Yedei Atam. I don't know why. I didn't want to write, I heard this reason. That was get me on reasons. And then we wanted to know what to do. To Bavaran, the Rebbe Tzachana, but she wrote that the Rebbe doesn't mix in because she wrote Milsa B'Taima. She wrote because maybe my grandmother has names that she wants to give. So I added Eich Sheyiyeh Hayeled Yikore Al Shem Echad Mishpachas Keikel Shamar Shlita. Whichever way, this kid is going to be named after someone in the Rebbe's family. I figured I'll try my best. I gave it to my shver, Rabbi Klein. He looks at it, says, Levi, you have no chance. The Rebbe doesn't get involved in names. There were cases where the Rebbe said the name after Fidik Rebbe. Okay, you had that. But a question like this, the Rebbe is not going to get involved. So I told him, look, you give it to the Rebbe. I have 8 days to decide, and worst case, I'll have to decide myself what to do. This was Friday morning at about 10:30 in the morning. He had just brought the Rebbe to 770, about 10 o'clock. This was about 10:30. No. Did he bring? No. The Rebbe was at 770. It was about 10:30 in the morning. I think the Rebbe was staying 770 then. Whatever. I go to Bobby Schusterman to pick up the bob for the Shalom Zohar, right? Tonight the Shalom Zohar. I'm there by Bobby Schusterman, and the phone rings. Who is it? My shver. Levi, come right back. The Rebbe wrote 2 words. Under we write about the name, and then you the atam, etc. No one want to know what to do. The Rebbe wrote 2 words: Duber Shlita. And then later, Askar Alatzin. My shver went ballistic. Never saw something like this. The Rebbe should push it right. Shmulu gave a name Yisrael Rabbi Leib. The Rebbe thanked him, but the Rebbe should
give the name.
Now, I was going through a certain hard time at that time, and I think that the Rebbe wanted to appease me. I don't know. Commentaries will give to other people to do, but that's no question that the Rebbe. But I want to tell you another very, very interesting Hashgacha Pratis. Our first son, his name is Yisrael Rabbi Leib. Yisrael Rabbi Leib was born Chaf Aleph Iyar Tafshim Mem Vav. Chaf Aleph Iyar. When I gave the name Yisrael Rabbi Leib, everybody was asking, like, Bas V'Tamol. It was born Chaf Aleph, the bris was at the end of the whatever. And the Rebbe's brother, what? I said, yeah, the Rebbe's brother. My name is Levi Yitzchak, my wife is Chana, and he's Yisrael Rabbi Leib. When was Yisrael Rabbi Leib's yahrzeit? Is Yud Gimel Iyar, so it had nothing to do with his birth. We're trying to find out when is his birthday. Rabbi Zelikson asked the Rebbe, when the Rebbe made that Ha'ara, so he figured it'll be a little mechutzef, and he asked the Rebbe, maybe it's possible to know when was their birthdays. The Rebbe answered, Le'eis ato einu yudua. At present, it's not known. In Tafshin Mem, I don't know which year it was that he wrote him, in the Mems, Le'eis ato einu yudua. And everybody wanted to know, Le'eis, now it's not known. When will we know? Who's going to come and tell us what happened 80 years ago? Right? And I said, if the Rebbe says Le'eis ato einu yudua, that means eventually you'll find out. How? Geves. Let the Rebbe take care of it. Goes by a little while, and they gave out a maimer lekovet chaf aleph lekovet yud gimel iyar, the Rebbe's label's birth yahrzeit, and they wrote a date in Sivan with a question mark because they got it from the daughter gave the passport. But passports when Russia passport means absolutely
mean anything, yeah.
The Rebbe said one time, "Daf passport bin ich älter."
Right.
Do you know what it is? The Rebbe's in the.
There's a bunch of.
I have the thing. I have the original. 1895 that it was born. That it was born 1902.
But all the immigration papers are all wrong. Yeah.
Everything is 1895. Anyways, so Sivan. Later, after Gimel Tammuz finally came out, the Reshimis of the Rebbe Tzechana, and she writes at the end of Iyar, she writes that these days is my son's birthday. So at least now we know it's the end of year. So we have a shtickle idea, but we don't know not the year, not the. About 10 years ago or something, they found in Nikolaev the registry of the whole thing, and Yisrael Rabbi Leib was born Chaf Aleph Iyar. Same exact date as my Yisrael Rabbi Leib. That's an interesting point. Then there's another thing which I would like to clarify. There are certain people that say that the Maimer of Bris Milah, Asher Tiv Charus Korev, that came out in Tafshin on Aleph, has to do with me. I just want to clarify what happened and then let anyone learn Pshat vis-a-vis. My Berel's bris was, as I said, at the end of Shvat Nun Aleph. In between Label and Berel, I heard a story from my shwager, Rebbe David Krinsky, that I may not say it exact, but I'm saying the concept. That one time, after one of his brissen, Rabbi Krinsky, the father, was taking the Rebbe, and the Rebbe always used to ask the family, question what's going on, and before the bris, after the bris, and the Rebbe used to be very, very much involved in the families of Maskiris. And the Rebbe asked about the bris, and the Rebbe asked, "Hat der Tate gechazet chassidus?" So he said, "Yeah." So the Rebbe asked, "Welche chassidus?" So he said, "Von Teiro Eir." That's a name as like, and the Rebbe said, "Von Teiro Eir," like. Question mark. Like, this is what I heard. Fartik. That was the conversation. Now, this I heard after my label was born. So now when it came to my Berel's bris, I started looking, is there any other maimer? Now, today you have all the memorim, all the sichas, all the igras, alt. Those days, we didn't have all of this. Nicht gewinn. So I went to my dear friend, Reb Shalom Charitonov, who was a bok in Nifla in the Rebbe's Teire. And I asked him, is there any mimer from the Rebbe on bris? So he says, this epis in Tovshin Tezvav, a maise with Yolis, with this, with that. Anyway, the story is, Rabbi Yolis from Philadelphia. We could have a whole podcast about Rabbi Yolis. One of the cute things about Rabbi Yolis that I found, is there anybody in every single Igros Kodesh? Is there anybody? Rabbi Yolis. Each one of them. There's a letter to Rabbi Yolis. Anyways, even Zevin doesn't have in each one. Yolis has in each one. Anyways, so Rav Yolis, he came to Rabbi. For those of you who don't know Rabbi Yolis, when you look at pictures of the Fabrengen, on the left-hand side there's a guy with a streimel. That's Rav Yolis. It's a whole story, of course. You'll have it some other time. Or you had it, the Christish. And he came, knocked on the Rebbe's door in Tavshin Tezvav one night. The Rebbe asked him, was for Yom Tov is heint? He says, ich hab Wachnacht. My Einikel is having a bris tomorrow. So the Rebbe says, where's the Einikel? In Williamsburg. So he says, so why are you here? There's different versions to the story, but basically he said, I'm doing the Wachnacht here. Yeah. So I think the Rebbe said to call Rebbe Yolis. I'm not sure exactly, but the Rebbe said, a maimer lekove the Wachnacht, ashetiv karus korev. I made photostats of that maimer. Very geschmacke maimer, a balabatische maimer, whatever. And I said that maimer by the bris. Fertig. This was the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Adar, beginning. Goes by a couple of days, and my shver, Rabbi Klein, asked me, what's that maimer that you chazered by the bris? Now, my shver, I don't know if this was one of the top things on his agenda to know which maimer. We had to always have the bris 8 o'clock in the morning in the house, because 9 o'clock he has to be in the office. No matter what, 9 o'clock he has to be in the office. Rabbi Chadakov is going to be there checking it out, right? So always the bris were in the morning. So I don't know if it's the Gelagenim Cup. And he asked me, which maimer did you chazer? I never asked it till Gimel Tammuz. After Gimel Tammuz was different. But before Gimel Tammuz, I never asked him, this from the Rebbe, not from the Rebbe, whatever. One time he asked me, you ever heard of a certain sefer? Every time he would ask me a question like that, I would say, yes. Tell me which one, this one? Yeah. Give me, I used to run. If I didn't have it, I used to run, buy it. I used to bring it to him. A couple of days later, I got it back. So I have a few sefarim that, with this kind of stories. I know exactly what happened to that sefer. So, with Maimer, so I told him, okay. Goes by another day or two, and he asked me, maybe you have a copy of it? So sure. I ran home, I brought him the copy, and I gave it to him. After that, that was it. I didn't hear from him anything after that. But right after that, I went upstairs to Rebbe Yoel Khan, who used to make the memory. And I told Rebbe Yoel, I'm going to tell you a story, and you do with it whatever you want. And I told him the whole story. And I told him, I think the Rebbe's bris is Chai Nissen, a month from now. I think that if we prepared this maimer for Hagah, I would assume that, because I said, I can't tell you if the Rebbe asked. Ich weiß nicht. Aber ich schmeck, als etwas tut sich dort. And Take, he made the maimer, and it came out Muge from the Rebbe. Now we have a Muge dike maimer for the Rebbe for Bris, Asher Tivkar. So a lot of people think that the Rebbe told me to learn this maimer. No, absolutely nothing. The Rebbe had nothing to do with it. I will tell you something, but I don't want Chassanim to take it very, okay, I'll tell you. I got married, it was on a Sunday night. And those days, Friday night, the Seder was in 770, maybe it's still today, I'm not sure, that a bocher chazert a maimer. Reb David Raskin used to have a bocher that chazert a maimer before, between Mincha Ma'ariv. So I chazert the maimer for Reb David. I'm one of the maimorim, those days, we used to make the Kiddushim of Chassanim Friday night, because we didn't know if Shabbos is going to be a Fabrengen or not. Sometimes you knew it Shabbos morning if there's a Fabrengen. The Rebbe would say, which Rashi, or this and that, and whatever. I'm talking about Tavshin Memhei. We had a lot of Fabrenges, but not every Shabbos. So the Shabbos of Mayufra finished, I had the Kiddush Friday night. Lepel Taka, there was no Fabrengen, but the Kiddush was Friday night. So I chazed another Maimer by the So Shabbos, we had a small Kiddush, 70. I got very, very sick over that Shabbos. I got some mice, whatever. I went to the wedding. I had a high fever. I had a good time by the wedding. It was perfectly fine. Now, those days, there were still chilukei dayos, which lechadoidi to chazer by the chasana. The Rebbe's or the Fidik Rebbe. It was fresh. It was still the first few years. So what I did was, to chazer both my morim by the Kabbalas Panim Pasnish, to the Tzarachmanas on the Eilam. So what I did was, when we did the ksuba in the morning, I chazered.
There's a story from the Rebbetzin with Chanina.
I don't know story with Chanina.
He's told the Rebbetzin that he's doing that maimer from the Fidik Rebbe. He says, "There's talking maimer from my man."
Basically, Chanina got married way after me. I was Chanina's tutor. That was way after me. Anyways, so I chazered by the ksuba, I chazered the Fidik Rebbes, by the Kabbalas Panim, I chazered the Rebbes. Fartik. The next day, I was more sick. Actually, at night, Monday night, for Sheva Brachas, somebody made a Sheva Brachas for us, somebody in Crown Heights. I came to the Sheva Brachas, and when Sheva Brachas, I fainted. Pasha fainted. Kipshut. Fart went home. So the next day, my mother decided she wants to ask the Rebbe for a bracha. We went to the doctor. The doctor said, "Ich weiß nicht, what this is. I have no idea." Anyways, so she decided she wants to write the Rebbe for a bracha. My shver said, "Don't worry, it'll take a couple of days. Everything will be just fine." So what did my mother do? She wrote a zettel, and she gave it to Rabbi Groner. Okay, she gave it to Rabbi Groner. She waited. Rabbi Groner comes out, and he said this. As a Mama schreibt wegen Azun, a Chosen was davon ma Brache. Für was hat sie nicht zugeschrieben, als der Chosen hat gechazert 4-mal Chassidus? That was the Rebbe's question. Obviously, the Rebbe must have heard it from my shver. I don't know. But I'm just telling you what Rabbi Groner told my mother. I just want to add it that the Rebbe wants Torah. That's what the Rebbe wants.
Okay, back to the point.
Okay, and I don't think we even discussed my father's shlichus yet.
Okay, so
we didn't touch that.
So now we have disclaimer. We're not done. There's more. Okay, Yashakeach. Thank you very much, Rabbi Garelik.
With pleasure.
Tzlacha.